We're here to talk about the Odyssey, and you heard our concerns given the trailers and all the media that was released beforehand. Many other people voiced their concerns, sometimes outrageously. So first question, was it worth being concerned about this film?
I'll put it this way. I think they were trying to maybe bait a response at this point, because the expectation I had going in compared to the reality of what was on the screen were so far apart. I mean, I was worried about the Cyclops. It's arguably the most memorable
One of the best
scene
parts
in the
of the
movie.
film, isn't it? Yeah.
We were worried about the armor. It turns out it is quite a specific design choice for Agamemnon, a character, to give him this presence during the sacking of Troy, which is great, an almost Vader-esque, entry scene. We talked about the casting decisions and how much, and like Lupita Nyong'o, she's out there talking. This never helps the movie when the actors talk mad shit in interviews about the source material, and she's going, well, I think Homer was a bit of an incel and he didn't focus on the women enough. And it's like, you get super worried.
Also, Homer wasn't a real person, spoiler.
Right. So not only is she not in the movie in any meaningful way that it should affect your enjoyment, the movie also gives her a really good scene, and she's really good in it, and also explains that it's got nothing to do with her being the most beautiful woman in the world. And that's explained for two factors. One being the fact that they say it's all just a ruse so we can sack the city and have the trade routes open. And second, she's got a twin. So if she's so beautiful she must be a 10, then obviously her twin would also be so beautiful and must be a 10. But all of the areas, and I'll get into the Elliot Page stuff when it's appropriate to do it, all of the areas that were meant to be these causes for concern were completely not. And ultimately, the Chudosphere are holding one big fat L on this. In fact, it is so embarrassing.
And doubling
now.
down every year. They wake up. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is so embarrassing to see these people double down on it and just not be able to admit you got a little bit hoodwinked. You had some concerns, but Christopher Nolan has delivered another good movie, and one that might be better for its technical aspects than its storytelling. We'll talk about that. But I mean, ultimately, this for me is like a 7.8. It's like closer to an 8 than a 7 in terms of a movie. And I had a great cinema experience as well, which we'll talk about. But what about you? I'll guess Monty is the classicist among us. So did it deliver for you?
All right. Look, I think a lot of, like you're saying, the complaints were overblown. I think all of the, like you say, the Chudosphere, which was so worried about this being woke, is just not at all. That's not my concern. My concern that we've reiterated, and also this is, by the way, in our Nolan arc, the last film that we are recording this episode of, because we recorded all of it before this came out. So you're going to hear episodes where we say, oh, I don't know about this. And one of the things that I said on this show repeatedly was that I don't know if Nolan really understands mythology, and I find his obsession with explaining things instead of just letting, I don't think he has a great understanding of human psychology or spiritualism. And for me, that might be a problem. And in this movie, it is a problem for me.
Okay.
I think it falls short, and his tendency to explain things, which we'll talk about, versus mythologizing, is not really in the spirit and feels very modern. But at the same time, I don't mind when people take classic texts and rework them for the modern era. The Odyssey will always exist if you want to read it. It's more interesting to hear other artists' interpretation of the Odyssey. And when you're translating it to film, you're going to have to make different decisions. If you're trying to get it to resonate with people today, that's a choice that you're going to have to make, which is partially the American accents, partially the more modern language, partially the themes that he decides to go with. And at the end of the day, Nolan is making a high budget movie that has to attract a very large audience to be a summer blockbuster hit. And if the Odyssey as a text has to take a few L's in order to accomplish that, people will still be inspired to go back and read the poem. And I do think that we can take this timeless story and give it a modern update. So I don't hate that. And we're not going to go into every little detail. How did they change the Odyssey? You know, because that's first off boring, and second off will be done other places by people who can actually read ancient Greek, unlike me. But I will talk about some of the decisions that I thought were a little bit odd, and how I think it kind of takes away from the spirit of the work. And I didn't really like his characterization of Odysseus as a person, and I don't think it gave Matt Damon enough really to work with there. But we're condensing a large poem into a 3-hour movie, and we're trying to make it palatable for modern audiences. So I agree with you, Richard. For me, it was probably between a 7 and 8 out of 10. But also, like, I think the criticism is really misplaced because people are focusing on, as you said, the casting, which we said may be a cause for concern, but we can tell you it is not actually. And then also some of the visual choices. But one thing that this movie nails is that it's visually spectacular.
Yes.
I really like the soundtrack for this. I think it was very atmospheric, unique, excellent in terms of setting the tone. Totally worth seeing in theaters. And, you know, would we get this level of production value and artistry and craftsmanship from another director of the Odyssey at this budget level? The answer is no. So it's better to have it than not have it, in my opinion.
What's insane to me is, like, first of all, this whole, like, Chudder's fair reaction to the movie. What's funny is, these people, it's why I always used to say on By the Numbers, you ever put me in a room with, like, Nicola Nyong'o from Astralis, bro, you wouldn't even last 5 questions before I just expose him as the cretin and shill he obviously is. Like, people like that can only be clever when they're just in an echo chamber with nobody even pushing them or pressing them on what they mean. Because what's mad is, these people, because they've just given a million tweets now, let's be me also, there's also a counter circle jerk griftosphere of, if I keep making tweets about the Odyssey and why it's bad, a bazillion people read my tweet and comment and reply, and then I get the X monocyte. That's also a hilarious thing, because obviously they're going to say Christopher Nolan sold out and he's gone woke. It's like, Nate, you make your money just anti-woke grifting yourself, you fuck. Like, some of you even admit you haven't watched the film. If you don't know, here's a funny detail. You might not even know, Monty, if you're not even tangentially immersed in that world. There's a famous meme that they all laugh at, it's supposed to be based, where basically you go like, it's Giga Chad talking to another Giga Chad, and he's going like, oh, I hate this thing about the film because that's not what Nietzsche meant. And the other one's like, yeah, well, I always thought Nietzsche meant this. I'm like, have you read Nietzsche? No, me neither. That's the gag. But here's the point, like, every good joke has a grain of truth in it. Most of the people in that sphere are literally LARPing. So I'll start here. You never read the Odyssey, you fuck. Shut your fucking mouth on X.com, guy who posts racist memes and does things like talk about a Better Call Saul. You're telling me you read the Odyssey in any translation? Guy who tells me, by the way, it's correct, that Emily Wilson's an idiot who's injected all woke stuff. You never read any version. You haven't read hers. You haven't read the original. You know why I know you didn't? It's really dense. It's actually like the Bible, where you can't read it on your own. You won't understand the antiquated language, which is very archaic. You will need someone to literally explain things to you, like references to what people knew about the ancient world at the time. Even things with the gods, you need to know things like not just the Iliad and the Aeneid. And all. You need to know a whole classical civilization world of, like, what the Greeks were like and how they approached life, etc. And if you don't have all that, I'm sorry, I don't even believe any of you cracked the book open. I think that's one of those things you just pretend, because we all know the gist of the story because it's so influential. You just pretend you knew what was
just
in there.
Quickly,
I'll give you an example. People told me Nolan doing his usual time jumping around. That is what the Odyssey, like, you fucking soul. The Odyssey's not a story from the beginning to the end. Again, you don't know what you're talking about. You're just making it up. You're a liar. You never watched this film or read the book. Like, what are we talking about?
Just super quick, Duncan, and I'll let you continue. The thing that bothered me with a lot of the messaging from those types of people was they talk about, like, the Odyssey, and they do this with all of this, you know, it's like the right-wing statue guy is the term, you know, statue guy. You have a statue as your avatar, and you talk about, you know, like Marcus Aurelius and all this stuff has been super foundational for Western civilization, but you've never read the text.
No,
you don't understand. And all of these
Or at
guys,
least you've never read it in Latin or Greek either. These people don't read
well,
Latin
I mean, listen, is that important?
You don't even need to go that far.
I mean, that's the classicist in you talking.
Sometimes when they talk about translations, it is annoying.
I am talking about these guys have very clearly never read the Odyssey, and yet all of a sudden they're proselytizing about how it's this very important foundational myth. and it's super important that we preserve it in any attempt to interpret it away from the foundational text, which, by the way, is every single translation differs, right? So we've already done interpretation, right? So so these people really fucking expose themselves as being absolute imbeciles. Like, I tried to read as much of the Odyssey as I could get through before I went to see the movie. And
it's hard sledding, bro. I read it in a class with an expert who was able to, help me with a lot of it. Even then, it's still hard work. It's not passive reading where you're just chilling before bedtime. It's active work to read a book like that.
And the other thing I tried to do before recording this episode was I wanted to look about what was so different about the translation that Christopher Nolan supposedly used. And by the way, it was projected as being a feminist interpretation. It really isn't. The major changes, I mean, it might be done with feminist intent, but the major changes are ultimately to remove the word whore and to use something more appropriate. Because one of the things that I think was it Emily Watson is her name?
Yep.
I think one
Wilson.
of the Wilson, sorry. One of the things she wanted to convey in the text was that when the women were given over to the suitors, they didn't have agency. They were essentially slaves. Yet the judgmental language of whore, or in some modern translation, apparently slut, is used. I couldn't believe that, but whatever, right? She stripped that language out and wanted to show that they were indeed slaves and they didn't have agency. And I don't think that's like an insane alteration to the text, right? Like, and she even came out. There's a clip of her circulating now saying she didn't like Nolan's interpretation. Yep. So fucking riddle me this: if Christopher Nolan was so enamored with this feminist woke version of events, why is the fucking architect of the supposed feminist interpretation not behind Christopher Nolan's vision? None of these people have any place discussing anything to do with academia. It's actually ridiculous.
Yeah, and I studied Latin, not Greek, so I've only ever read the Odyssey in translation. But it is obviously a very hard text to translate because you're dealing with something that is close to 3,000 years old, that is entirely based off of a different value system from a different country. It was written in kind of classical Greece.
It also wasn't written. Here's the other thing. It's literally the world's most legendary big fish story that has passed through 1 billion people, literally in bars. Where, remember, here's a detail people don't know about the ancient world. No one drank water back then. You couldn't purify water. Everyone drank wine. That's why wine and beer were really weak in certain areas of time, because that's what you had to drink to get water in your system. So another thing is as well, we're hearing, it's like I always say, Monty, about quotes that are from antiquity. They're godlike now because 1 million people made them better. There's been 1 million editors that they passed through, and that's why the quote's insane now. But then you go back and look at the original, it's nowhere near that. It's just vague. And
this is why I said there was no Homer. There may have been a real Homer at some point in time, but it's lost. It's lost to antiquity, and also the way these things work and why we get such powerful, I think, emotions out of the Odyssey and the Iliad is to go back to Jung, is that they touch on certain aspects of the collective unconscious. So it's basically been filtered through a bunch of bards because remember, this was, it was actually musical. It was sung, right? And it was made in rhyming couplets. And so when you hear things like wine, dark sea, you have these poetic terms that are used over and over and over and over again because they're easy to remember. But people were memorizing tens of thousands of lines of poetry / song. And people were, every bard would probably have their own spin on this over centuries.
If you get to a point, Monty, where you don't remember after, you don't go, wait a minute, I've got this. You just fucking make some up off the cuff and you keep going. And if your
but that's why you have wine, dark sea, so that you can keep saying it.
Yes, that's the other thing. The parts that are cool, they do go through, and then the parts that aren't, people just change them as they need to.
Yeah. So imagine like a song where people are just adding verses over hundreds of years, and the next guy hears it, and if the audience really responds well to that point, and everybody remembers it, it kind of sticks with you. It goes in the next guy's song.
I'll give you an example. Here's a
and
mad
if it sucks,
one.
it just gets edited out.
I'm actually going to fry your brains. I want you to both pull up Google and Google this. I'm going to bet you also didn't know this detail, and it is going to. This is some Mandela effect shit. You are not going to believe what I'm about to say. Okay. All I want you to Google is lyrics Gaga Poker Face. Do you know what the verses to the song Poker Face are? I bet you don't, Monty. You probably think it's Poker Face. Look after that, what the next lines are. It's going to actually blow your mind. You're going to think this is Mandela effect. I bet you'll think I picked the right. How have I done that, Richard? I've seeded it. The lyrics to an actual pop song that was out, Monty, goes poker face, and then it's like fuck her face is the next line, by the way. It's a song about like throat fucking someone, bro. This is great. Yep. But haven't we all heard that song? And we all thought they just repeated poker face twice. Didn't everyone do that? Like,
probably for the radio edit human. They did.
And I've looked this up. It isn't like some fucking fake thing. But I thought at first, have I picked a gag version of the lyrics? It's on all of them. And if you ever go back, you will actually hear it, but you didn't hear it before, bro. Everyone thought they just repeated the same verse again, didn't they? Like, that's crazy. So, but yeah, of course.
Lady Gaga and the Odyssey. The comparison
together
you only hear here.
Well, I mean, everyone was losing their mind over Travis Scott.
Are you ready? By the way, Travis Scott in it for 4 seconds. Here's what gives it away. Let's just run through all the things before we get into the details. Yeah. Oh my God, have you heard that rap song? First of all, the rap song plays in the credits, dickhead. You can walk out the theater. It's also, secondly, the rap song isn't even most of the song. You just took a clip for Twitter. The song is by the Goranson guy. It's actually a pretty cool song. And even the rap part, I actually like Travis Scott. It's a pretty good Travis Scott song. It's just a little like verse, basically, with a cool background, which was taken from the soundtrack of that. When they go to Hades, when they did that, it was that same bit that was in the background there. That's like the beat to make the hip hop part. It's not in any way part of the film, by the way. Even in the beginning, when he goes, a man, he's in it for about 30 seconds. And actually, Christopher Nolan's point there wasn't even a bad one, which is actually isn't someone doing like a freestyle rap with like written elements a bit like a fucking bard. Like, that's not even some tortured point, is it?
It literally would have been like a bard telling the story of the Odyssey.
I'll give you an angle. Here's why, Monty, I don't mind that this is different from the Odyssey. First of all, I have never ever taken the position, literally for decades now, you have to make things exactly. When you adapt things, you are by definition adapting to a different medium. Everything won't work. I actually think a lot of the changes Lord of the Rings made were good, even though they did things like combine characters, give speeches to other people, change actual set sequences. You think like, why are you doing that? Because, mate, one of those books would be 8 hours long. What are we doing? So actually what you're doing is trying to get to the essence of it and then retell it as Peter Jackson. So similarly, here's how I can solve the whole problem for you, Monty. This isn't the Odyssey, mate. This is Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. I would have even put that as the title. Because as I pointed out, we talked about this on the past one, Naked Lunch, one of my favourite movies. Fuck all like the book Naked Lunch, by the way. But I'll tell you what, there's a reason why even Burroughs was like, yeah, it's kind of cool, isn't it? Because it's basically fucking Cronenberg's Naked Lunch, isn't it? It's not Naked Lunch. It's not even supposed to be. I don't even know what faithful would mean. Surely faithful is you're faithful to the spirit of it, not to the letter of the fucking book. And then also, similarly, here's another point to make of why those people are fake, that they want to preserve the Odyssey. 2 reasons. One, who the fuck else is trying to make the Odyssey as like a $500 million movie and get everyone in the world to see it? Christopher Nolan's your best friend if you want to preserve the Odyssey, you fucking dunce. He's the biggest filmmaker, the only filmmaker pretty much that can guarantee I'm going to make closer to $1 billion on a movie and get everyone to watch it and talk about it. And then also, let's throw this in as well, right? Which is, if you're going to go that sort of a route, we'll get to it later. I actually think that he put some mad-based things in what appeared from the outside to be a gift to woke people, that when they accept internally, they are suddenly forced to address ideas of masculinity, borders. The idea maybe strangers could actually be negative to your society. What are we trying to preserve? But mate, and we having a fucking laugh that he did this is one point I want to make now, because we're going to go back to this later. One of the things I'm convinced about Christopher Nolan, it's why I think he's a genius as well. It's not just that he does good films. It's that he always seems to do this very clever textual thing where he takes the theme of the plot of the film and somehow makes the way he tells the story and shoots the movie fit that. So in Tenet, it's the idea it's time going back and forwards. Let's see how he's shooting it. In The Prestige, the film is a magic trick set up as an actor turn, a prestige. He did it on this. He did like a Trojan horse where if you're watching it, you think it's just a blockbuster, like a box office blockbuster. And because of all the shit you heard going in, you think it's going to be mad woke. That's why the only funny memes you'll have seen, I see how you did one, Richard, is when you do the joke of like, it was a bit out of character that moment when Odysseus turned to the camera and said, now it's RuPaul's Drag Race 1066. Like, that's at least funny because that is what people acted like it was. Meanwhile, the movie actually smuggles in all the topics that these dickhead chuds want you to talk about that are really important, but they'll never know that because they never gave it any time. And half of them never watched the movie either, by the way. That's the other thing that annoys me. So we can go into all the casting stuff separately. What's funny is some of that, even on a surface level, I think to their point, that isn't incorrect if we mean about society or what we do into children and stuff. The problem is they picked the worst movie ever to do this on because they picked a banger director that made a good I'm with you. It's between a 7 and an 8. And also, that's because it's Christopher Nolan, bro. If this was like random director who like think of those hacks who do like fucking, you know, the whatever those big disaster movies. If one of them made this movie, it'd be like one of the movies of the year, bro. We'd be like, holy fuck, this guy's really good. Because what also gave it away, the last thing I'll say is this. You always give yourselves away when you keep the fucking mic on, boys. You got to cut yourself off when you say a good point. Because what did you all then say? Besides, Christopher Nolan's never even done any good movies. They're all lacking emotion. They're just an autistic guy who doesn't understand cinema. They're not even actually, eventually they'd said everything. They're not visually stunning. The sound's played out. He hires whack directors. The stories don't make sense. He always thinks he's a smart person's idea. It's a stupid person's idea of a smart person. He thinks he's doing clever plot. Well, at the end, mate, you've just invalidated everything about Christopher Nolan. Since I think he's brilliant, I think you're a dickhead. There's my final conclusion.
I mean, I'll put it this way, to your point, Duncan, about getting people in the cinema and preserving the Odyssey. I went to a midnight screening, right? And it was a midnight screening with no trailers, right? So it was straight into the movie, and everybody was rushing to get sat down. It was full, right?
That's crazy. Because again, imagine doing Shakespeare and getting everyone's bums in the seats, bro. It's going to be really hard to get kids to go watch this
I was
movie,
sat down, and this young Asian guy, probably about like 20, turned to me and said, "Oh, can we swap seats? Because me and my mate, we didn't know it was going to be full, so we put a seat in between us, but can I sit next to him?" And I went, "Yeah, fuck it, whatever." So get up. And he sits down and he turns to me and he goes, "I know fucking nothing about this, bro." And I went, and I went, "What, the film?" And he went, "Yeah, it was a book or something, wasn't it?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's a poem." He goes, "Fucking hell." And like, he was sat there and I could hear him like, with the Cersei scene, he went, "Fucking pigs, bro!" He audibly was shocked by what he was saying, and I thought that was amazing. You've got this 20-year-old Asian dude from Birmingham, never read the Odyssey, coming to a midnight screening of the Odyssey because it's a Christopher fucking Nolan movie. It's a big tent event, and the Chudosphere are going, "What is Christopher Nolan doing for Western society?"
It's all the people. Like, I can't believe nobody likes the classics anymore. Meanwhile, Christopher Nolan literally forcing everyone to learn about the classics. No one else could do this, by the way.
Also, we can get to this later if you want, but I even think some of the woke elements, actually have a perfectly reasonable explanation that aren't woke. But bigger than that, I even think, right, you know, I said on the past episode, people always say one of the clever loopholes supposedly Nolan solved is because his producer is his wife. He also doesn't have the same level of studio like fingerprints on what he does, because he can sort of just say to his wife, "But you know what I meant by that. You're my wife. Like, here's why I did it." And she'll be like, "Yeah, that checks out." And then tells the studio, "Don't worry, he's not off pace. You know, he's still doing it." Yep. And as a result, I'm pretty sure he also has Final Cut. He doesn't have to put these things in his movie. So that, to me, if anything, I think he gave the most token gesture across the aisle to the people you probably do have to. Let's be real. There are quarters. There are concerns. There are people who will do.
Well, officially now because of the Academy Awards. They've literally codified it now, which, by the way, I'm totally against. I'm with Mads Mikkelsen on that one. That's ridiculous to impose any form of criteria on an artist. Is mental. But anyway, sorry.
But if you're going to skirt that and do it, I think he did it masterfully, bro. Because again, the most of the things people think that were going to affect it, at worst, they're minimal. At worst, they're minimal.
The question is this, Duncan.
Some of them even work, bro.
The question is this. Does a woke movie have to espouse woke values? I say, does a movie have to, is it woke if there is no element of woke within it? And this is what I mean. I'm watching this, right? And on a message, on a textual level, here's what I'm getting. I'm getting Odysseus is a man of conscience, a man who has done terrible things in service of his king. I don't think he's a PTSD cook. As some people, people were telling me.
I'm also sick of how many reductive takes around this massive movie that deals with big ideas.
Right. And also, I will say this, though. If you are going down the PTSD route, it is cool that he was having essentially ketamine therapy with Charlize Theron. She's just sucking him off and feeding him ketamine. That will, MDMA, whatever. That will get rid of your PTSD. But anyway, so I see.
Chance to be a fine thing.
I see.
I've got some shit to work out too.
I see, right? A guy who's haunted by some of the shit that he's had to do, but it's not what you think. It's not just the atrocity of war. The thing
by
is,
the way, Let's get to that later, because I also do think personally, I think a lot of people just said it this way, the final third really delivers. That, in my opinion, isn't just the fucking death wish, like, well, I'm getting revenge. Part of it's that I think he has
might be Nolan's best ending to a movie.
This is why I say it is Christopher Nolan's Odyssey.
Yeah.
Bro, I am certain, Monty, that he read the Odyssey and he came up with the idea at the end of the film, and that's why he made the film. I think he came up with, and who's done this after thousands of years, a unique interpretation on the Odyssey, a totally unique one, and not even postmodern, just modern. Yeah. Just an idea about like how differently we see what the Greeks were, what they were doing, what their values were. So let's get into that separately. One thing I want to say as well is this. I agree with you. People have made the mistake. This is why chuds bore me. Because you do know to a chud, this is how you know they're 22. They go, of course, everything went to bloody hell after they let Trump get elected and all the liberals went mental. If you believe in the subversion of culture, bro, it's been happening for like 100 years and it's just been gradual. And the point is, when you go, I wish it was the worst ones are the ones that were just 22. So they go, I wish it was 2000. And they think like, oh, imagine when it was like Limp Bizkit and Mountain Dew. Like, bro, we all said history had ended, then you fuck. But let's say you even say the 90s. Mate, I'm just going to do a little one for you right now. I know the movies that people who are right-wing online and chuds love. These are the movies that are dope-rich and are not at all woke. Listen to these three films. So there's this film, right, called Braveheart. It's fucking based, because let's be real, Mel Gibson's in it, and we know he's based as shit. Yep. Well, the thing is, in this movie, it's about how the English are all pricks. And this brave Scotsman called William Wallace, he battles back against them. He wins all these wars. He even fucks the queen, who's like a French queen, right? Yep. And then he gets his revenge, and at the end, they kill him. Yeah, but really, his spirit, almost none of those historical details happen. By the way, that French queen, I think, was 9 and never met him. And loads of the things that you think are cool about the movie
it's the most ahistorical film ever made.
They're just
probably.
Artistic license. But let's be real. If you're Scottish, of course you fuck with that movie, because the spirit of the movie avoids all the shit that had to be historical. It's essentially to you the ultimate idea of we will rebel and we will resist and we'll never give in. And even if you beat us and kill us, we will always be Scottish and you'll never take that. By the way, I am part Scottish. What's mad is I watched that movie in like both sides. I'm on some like, what are you doing? Like, so that one, there's one. There's
also, by the way, this is a medieval film where the iconic line is, "You can take my life, but you can never take my freedom," as if this is some sort of modern liberal democracy.
True.
Like it basically.
You think that wasn't made for Americans to go? It's in England. You can't take my
exactly.
You wouldn't be thinking that back then. I know. Then there's another one for you. How about this? So then you've got one of the most beloved movies ever. It's Braveheart. Not Braveheart. Gladiator. That's one of the most base ones. The guy who has that profile picture you're saying, Richard, the Greek boss, he's got to be loving Gladiator. Who isn't? We reviewed it on this channel. It's mega. By the way, full of all brilliant ideas about masculinity and family and fucking fealty and duty to your people. Also, by the way, the entire overt political framing of the movie is on some fucking insane, like, we can never allow fascism or dictatorship. We should devolve power to a republic. That's literally American thinking from the 18th century. That is absurd, but you don't see that as woke because you enjoyed the movie. This is what I hate. Richard nailed it. Do you know why Supergirl made no movie? No money. Not because it's woke, it's because it's woke and shit.
Correct.
You know why this made loads of fucking money? While it has woke elements, it's a really good film made by a fucking genius. Then, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, look, on that point that I was, that I made online, because this was the one time I was willing to roll up my sleeves and argue about it, because I think it was just so unfairly represented by these idiots, like, and to a point where if they just sat and thought about it for a moment, they should want to tell the lie the other way and get people into the cinema to see this movie because of its themes. But the reality is this: go woke, go broke has never been a thing. I get it.
Of course
I get it. It's a hilarious. It rhymes. It rhymes. Go woke, go broke. It has never been a rule. It's never been a rule. I've seen woke bullshit pancake and creator, and they go woke, go broke. And I've seen advertising campaigns that are woke make a fuck ton of money. I mean, like the Colin Kaepernick stuff that Nike did. One of their most successful advertising campaigns, and all the retards going out to buy new Nikes to set them on fire for a Twitter post didn't change that. It wasn't go woke, go broke. It was go incredibly woke, tap into a cultural zeitgeist to make a fuck ton of money. It's you can do it both ways because of how society operates. You can have conservative style movies and messaging. By the way, I argue that is what is happening in this film.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it's conservative with a little c.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. The difference is they want the Northman, but the Northman is really like you never get. I'm amazed they even made a film that right.
Yes,
but also the Northman. The people want that, but it also made no money. Like
that's
we love
point.
the Northman, and we love Eggers.
How many of us are having to say, "What about the Northman?" They go, "I haven't watched it yet." You tell you what, you watched this fucking movie though, haven't you? You fuck because he made it an event. So think of the three things I've just ran down and immediately destroyed there. You can absolutely change key details of the plot of a book or story, no matter how good it is. Lord of the Rings. You can change historical details to suit your plot, which are totally false in real life, Braveheart, and you can inject modern politics, even left-wing politics that you claim not to like, and at the end love the fucking movie Gladiator, because let's be real, the fucking essence of the movie overpowers that shit, doesn't it? You barely even remember. I bet even when I was saying that, you only start to remember. Yeah, it's a bit weird actually, the idea Marcus Aurelius and the general will be, by the way, the idea Roman general will be on that conversation with a fucking emperor. Your mind. You're mental if you think that that's like plausible. But the point is, because it was made by a master filmmaker with great actors and the story banged, you didn't give a fuck about that. Because why would you? It's a movie. The second you start a movie, you experience suspension of disbelief and you experience the movie. Because there's another thing. If we want to get into some of the other aspects, right? You know, this whole take of like, but it's jarring, Thorin, it's jarring. It wasn't. Do you know what? There's a couple of moments when I first saw on screen some of the people who I obviously ahistorically cast. The Korean guy that was in fucking Squid Game, who plays the guy, the Indian guy who was actually in previous Christopher Nolan movies like Tenet, by the way, and Inception. When he's on screen, yeah, obviously at first when you see that and he's saying, "I'm Greek," or the other guy's like, "Hey," yeah, at first for 1 second you go, "No, it's a bit weird that there's a Korean guy there." After that, you just watch the movie. Am I missing something? I'm not actually on some fucking... I'm not a cretin who just goes, "Oh, I'll accept anything." The rest of it's just so good, you don't keep thinking about that for 3 hours, do you?
Yeah, well, it's like I said, if the joke I made was about, Sinon, probably the pivotal moment of it being a culture war movie.
Even much more interestingly handled than you'd have thought from the way that was presented, right? A lot of nuance.
Absolutely. And I even saw, like, Michael J. Knowles, I think it was. He is essentially a classicist. He knows the classics, and he kept talking about Sinon as being an insert for Achilles just because they have the conversation in Hades.
What a conflation that
is. Again, I read specifically that.
By the way,
part
here's the giveaway, Richard. Do you want to know the other gag? Not only did these people not read the Odyssey, to know Sinon, you have to have read the Aeneid. They haven't read that either. They gave that one away too. Thanks for exposing yourself, all you guys. Here's another angle for you. I'll throw this out there now, because I think let's also do it and talk about the movie as well. We can talk about the cast too, but let's talk about the movie.
Okay.
I'll tell you one area, right, that even you guys were fucking upset about was when Monty, you were triggered as fuck when you saw that Agamemnon helmet, weren't you? Where it looked like something out of a sci-fi. Mate, I'm not joking. That fucking banged in the movie. I actually thought the way they made Agamemnon, a character who almost never spoke and just had crazy brooding presence on screen, and actually the scene, which by the way, a cool detail, I actually found this out because I actually for rare time did some research. They supposedly didn't tell Matt Damon in the movie, Richard, when they had the scene where he opens the gates of Troy, they didn't tell him they had all these extras hired. He thought it was just going to be a few people came through. So even he was like, because it was like to give like an all thing. When they open that gate and essentially they just flood into Troy and start killing everyone and raping and genocide, that is fucking, this guy has, the kids say it, but they've overused aura. He has crazy aura. Like you say, it feels like Darth Vader walking onto like the fucking Death Star or something. You're like, holy shit, going down. And all I'll say is this, if you want to see how good Christopher Nolan is, because by the way, he is masterful at casting, go look up the actor. He's called like Benny Safdie or something. Go look up who that guy is and what he was like in other movies. He would never be able to play this part in another movie. He would never ever pull it off. If he'd ever spoken, he would have given it. It was unbelievable how Christopher Nolan made me not even know any of that. I just saw what he presented to me and I thought that was fucking sick. That part was really powerful. Because you know what? I love Troy. Do you want to know what actually is shit about Troy? They take Brian Cox, an actor with incredible gravitas, and because it's 2004, he's just like George Bush or something. And he's just like, I want to war, and I'm going to get in there, give you this. They make that character a fucking shit liberal insert of like some whack shit. They don't allow him to be. This is what Agamemnon would be like. Agamemnon was like the fucking Galactus, bro. He comes and ends your world when he comes there. If you even see that motherfucker coming over the hill, you better run with everything that's not nailed down. It's over for you. I thought they played that masterfully.
Yeah.
I actually really hate the Agamemnon costume.
Well, then inspire a bit of fucking zest and match me.
So I actually really like Brian Cox's Agamemnon in Troy, because basically Agamemnon's kind of a little bitch, if we're being honest. He's incredibly
Isn't he one of the greatest generals of all time? He was a fucking sick guy who commanded. By the way, when you can command kings to kneel before you, that's just not because you got more. I'll tell you what, I won't make a whole thing out of it, but I'll tell you one of the biggest myths ever about dictators is the idea they must all just be little mama's boys who are scared. You don't inspire respect and fear if you like that, by the way. To actually do that on some level, you have to have some level where, because the thing about it, right, if you actually were this little bitch, you'd be instantly taken over by your sub-generals. You'd be immediately defeated in battle. When people fight for you in that way and they have that fear for you, you have something about your character. I've never met Joseph Stalin, but I'll tell you what, I bet he was a hell of a fucking figure when he walked in a room. I bet he didn't go, look at that little bitch, I'm going to fucking stunt on him. I bet the second he walked in the room, everyone went, fucking hell, I've never experienced presence like this before. I bet it was crazy. Mate.
So I think part of the issue is that, so there's obviously that dimension to Agamemnon. I think he's really hardcore. There's no doubt about that. And, you get that sense in this because it's about what you choose to show, right? And I don't think that you can't present him like this. I just found the armor to be really kind of goofy. But in any case, when we see him in this, what Nolan chooses to do is to talk about the sacrifice of Iphigenia, right? And then his murder at the hands of Clytemnestra, which also, kind of teases the Nolan Oresteia or whatever you want from it. But what they don't show is the Iliad. And the Iliad is really what makes him seem kind of petty, because basically the opening scene of the Iliad is him arguing with Achilles about Briseis, the slave girl, and like taking her away from Achilles, which is the fundamental conflict that takes place in the Iliad.
He does that famous line everyone loves of like, the gods send for you. That girl, the slave girl, is the one that they all argue over in the Iliad, basically.
Right. And part of this is Achilles is also, these are two giant egos colliding, and they're, it's not really about Briseis. It's about Achilles is the greatest warrior, but he doesn't want to just do whatever Agamemnon says. And he can't. He may be the only person who can defy him.
By the way, as a quick aside, do you not also, as you guys were actually there, find it hilarious that the same people now are like, it should be like Troy. When Troy came out, there was a massive furore about it wasn't that good. They changed the book. And even better, your favourite character, Achilles, by Brad Pitt, was the most criticised casting, where they were like, why have they put like pretty boy Brad Pitt in legendary Achilles position? The irony of that fucking discussion is crazy, also, guys.
We have, by the way, we've also talked about Troy on this channel.
It's a banger movie. Go watch the episode.
Yeah, it's a flawed gem. You know what? It is what it is. But I do think that like giving Achilles this kind of goofy ass armor and like no lines presence is, again, you have to sacrifice certain things because you can't include everything here. And what Nolan decided to do was to include a bunch of scenes that are referred to in the Odyssey about the Trojan War and the Trojan horse and the fall of Troy, right? That happened in the Little Iliad, which is not, we don't have the texts really where these things happened. It's all
also, if people don't know,
actually,
those two books were like the first two of like an 8-cycle. I think it was 8 or 10 or something. But we just don't have the majority of the other ones. There would have been more.
Yeah. So we have the Iliad and the Odyssey, but there was also stuff. There were epic poems that happened before the Iliad. There's epic poems that happened between the Iliad and the Odyssey. There's epic poems that happened after the Odyssey, right? We do have some of the plays, right? The Oresteia, the 3-play cycle, is about what happens when Agamemnon comes home, when he's killed by Clytemnestra, and then Orestes, which is his son, is getting revenge on Clytemnestra and Electra. He kills them. Then he gets chased around by gods called the Furies. But it's a huge amount of stuff, mythology around this. Some of which survives and some of which doesn't. But I did, I'm willing to, I do think Agamemnon is probably the worst part of this movie, but it doesn't make it unwatchably terrible because he's a small part by design, and he's intended to be intimidating, and he's intended to be more of a force of nature rather than an actual character. I actually love the
scene when he comes back from the dead and he's a shade.
Yes.
I think that scene's great. In this,
the whole Hades scene is awesome. All of it's awesome. And I don't have a problem with them not having Achilles and Hades. I don't have a problem with them making a lot of the changes in this film. I think for me, I don't like Agamemnon's appearance. I think it's too Hollywood. I think it takes you out of it. It's not my style.
Here's the thing I would say to people that were getting fucking triggered about the Achilles stuff. Achilles has such a minor part in the Odyssey itself. And I went back and I read book, that part of the Odyssey, specifically for this show and specifically for the movie. And essentially all Achilles says, Odysseus says, fucking hell, Achilles, you're killing it down there. Look at you with all the fucking people all looking up to you down in hell and that. And he just says, I would rather be a slave and alive than down here with and being adored.
The joke is he essentially says the opposite of the fucking Paradise Lost angle of like, better to reign in hell. No, he essentially says like, you'd rather just be alive, mate. It seemed cool to die gloriously. Yeah. Actually, shit, you're in hell now doing fuck all.
Now, what's interesting is that wouldn't fit into this film in any meaningful
jarring,
way.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
It wouldn't. And so,
remember, for the reveal later, you have to believe until 2/3 of the way in the movie that they all really thought they were righteous and that this was glorious. It was war that they'd won. And it's only that you're getting home hard. It's only later that the big reveal of I'm going to actually twist the whole perspective is even brought. And I've never seen someone do that take. We'll get to it later.
Yeah. And so anyway, I mean, like for me, here's the things that I would critique. These are the things that I think, and it's not a long list by any stretch of the imagination. I will say Zendaya does nothing. And
also the casting of Zendaya is very distracting because all you think about is fucking Zendaya when you're looking at her, and there's no reason that they couldn't have just cast somebody random.
There's absolutely no reason.
I can give you an angle for that though. By the way, I can lawyer defend almost all the casting. Here's an angle for Zendaya. Right? Remember the reveal
Thorin
in the movie.
Zendaya defense. I will remember this.
I know. Remember where you were, guys.
Remember the reveal in the movie that one of the reasons why he sees her face is there was an actual girl in the temple who was beheaded who looks like her, that then as a parallel, the statue of Athena is then beheaded also.
Yes.
Right? You know what they've actually just said there, Chods? She's just some average tenner-penny girl who'd just be in a fucking temple, bro. She isn't the most beautiful woman of all. That's fucking... In that scenario, he's not seeing, remember, gods can appear in a million different forms. She's just choosing to appear as the girl that to him represents like genocide, essentially. And just like, she didn't take Helen, bro. Look, in the story she did, if you know about the gods, but that's a separate fucking issue, didn't it?
But I mean, what I'm saying is I just don't think you need to have anyone high profile in that role, really. So... She is what?
But again, you need to fit a certain demographic in. And you have to hit certain quotas.
She was doing the fucking frowny face that she did all throughout Dune.
Yeah.
So that took me a little bit out of it.
Yeah,
right.
Great.
So I would critique that. I would also say when they go to that island with the giants.
The one that everyone was mad at in the scene, so it looks like medieval.
That's
they've
what
got
they're
iron
called.
And
Now I'll say here, unfortunately, and look, and it's a problem with the poem as well. I mean, part of the critique of the movie is critique of the source material, I suppose. But it is just like we sail to an island. There's a bad thing on an island. We sail away from the island, having lost some of our men. Rinse and repeat until there's a skeleton crew, and Odysseus washes up on the shore of Ithaca.
But I would have just deleted that entire section because look, there's a ton of vignettes in the Odyssey, and you're not going to be able to hit them all in 3 hours. You'd have to run like a 10-episode TV series. And the problem is like, why is that even in there? Just like, it's pointless. Get rid of it. We don't need it.
I would have cut that out if we got a really cool siren scene. That was the other thing I thought was unforgivable. For me, having read the myth as a child, and I've told you about how we had a cartoon called Ulysses 31, which was basically a French synthwave LSD sci-fi interpretation of the Odyssey, which was sick. So I loved Odysseus as a fucking kid. You know what I mean? Like he was the shit. All the stories about Cyclops, all like, he ruled. The Sirens, for me, what I wanted to say, it's one of the most baller fucking things Odysseus does. He says to his men, I am going to be the only man alive that can hear this song, this beautiful song, and live to tell the tale. And I will tie myself to a fucking mast and you will not let me out, right? And he tells all of his men he's going to do that. Now, in the movie, this throwaway, you see one tiny little siren off on a rock somewhere.
I mean, they also really short shrifted the Scylla and Charybdis scene.
And that was my other thing. The Scylla design choice just looked like they were pushed for time, and Charybdis wasn't as epic as I would have hoped. But I knew that going in because I'd already seen. They showed you Charybdis. Charybdis is just even though it's a daughter of Poseidon, it is just a really large whirlpool. But that didn't feel like an epically large whirlpool to me. And so I think what happened is probably some of the time they put on the cannibal space marine dudes they should have put into elsewhere in the film.
Also, for those of you, again, I'm not going to go through all the inaccuracies because that's boring, and you can look for that elsewhere.
Yeah,
but
CinemaSins will do that, or someone, you know.
Yeah, the Laestrygonians are cannibals, and there's a whole sequence where they go and get eaten basically, and in this one is just so goofy because they get on this island. They encounter this kid,
the giant baby.
He just screams, and then they all come and kill him for no reason. So it
reminded me of Monty Python because in like the Holy Grail, they go somewhere, see a monster, and then it's like run away.
The rabbit.
Charge, run away.
First of all, I will agree on that one because it actually reminds me of the point I made about Dune, which is the craziest part about Villeneuve. I think he has the same problem. Is him and Nolan are amazing at doing real world shit, just really big scale and cool. They don't ever delve into the mind, though. As I said in that movie, how could you make Dune and do the spice tracks and not show it and not have it be some crazy out there visuals? So same thing. Here's what you would have done with the Siren scene. You would have had it that we're hearing what Odysseus hears, and it's like the most beautiful women all laid over each other, their voice, come to me, and it's like there's something, and the music's fit. It would be really hard to do. I'll give you that. You'd have to be a visionary director, but you could make that mega. Now, with that said, here's why I think he did all these scenes, though. Because one of the things this movie, I think, inarguably succeeds at is what Christopher Nolan is the only director in Hollywood that can do great films at, which is the biggest scale you could ever imagine. Yep. He is unbelievable. Yep. Like, if you watch this movie, it doesn't feel long in the bad sense. It feels like you were on a fucking Odyssey. It feels like it takes forever, and he has to go through, and he has to land at a million different places, and everywhere they land, it's just danger and worse, and the gods are against him. There's another thing, Monty. You poo-pooed and laughed at that idea. Ha! Defy the gods are helping them. Bro, this film turned that on its head completely. Yeah. It actually showed how repeatedly he did defy the gods. But how even when the gods are basically telling him like how you can sort of make good and go, he's still good. If anything, he represents modern man to me. He was like, God doesn't exist. I'm going to do whatever I want, bro. You can't tell me what to do. And how at the end does he actually succeed? He finally just gives in and realizes you got to go with the flow sometimes, mate. The gods are above our ken and they have more power than us. And you have to just like give in, and at certain points you have to take the L, as it were. You have to bend the knee.
I mean, but my problems with this, and this is where I do think that my criticism of Nolan as an artist is valid when I said in other versions of this arc, particularly in the Inception episode when compared to Paprika, is that he's a technician, right? He understands, he's like a watch craftsman, right? He understands how all the pieces fit together, but he almost can't conceive of things that don't have explanations, which I think is the most disappointing. He cannot tap into the idea of a collective unconscious, which is really hard when you're doing myths, because that's
here's the thing, Monty. Duncan's already said it. The director you wanted to make this movie was Guillermo del Toro, or maybe Peter Jackson,
or Terry Gilliam, or something. A guy with a fantastic element to him.
Yeah. Or Satoshi Kon if he was alive, his anime version of it, right? But the issue here is that for me, what takes me out of this film is that he has to explain everything. It's like, well, it wasn't the Trojan War really wasn't about Helen being stolen. It was about the trade routes. And doesn't everybody know that? And I'm like, no, it's, Helen was taken as a result of the judgment of Paris. Can't we just accept that Helen was the most beautiful woman and Aphrodite made her fall in love with Paris, and then that was the reason behind the war? Like, there's no reason.
But then you don't get the baller scene later on with John Bernthal where he the face that launched 1,000 ships, and he turns around and she's got that scar, and he says she might muster 500 now.
I thought that was actually a pretty funny joke.
That's a good line, but you don't have to say that. You don't have to explain everything.
Sure, it is a recurring theme, not just in the Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. It's a recurring theme in Christopher Nolan's work. He's essentially not a deconstructionist in a philosophical sense, but like a deconstructionist in a sort of cinematic
I'll go
sense.
You one better, bro. I've said this before because I can take the L on this. I actually think I know why I'm the only person who I've fucked with every Christopher Nolan film ever, even the ones people told me were bad, like Tenet. I was like, let it grow on you. You'll see in time that will actually age out and it'll be considered one of his classics, and people will forget, like Blade Runner, that they all said it was shit, and then now they all think it's mega. I think the same will happen with this in 10 years, right? One thing I discovered about Christopher Nolan that makes it make make perfect sense. First of all, right, it turns out, everyone goes, I hate the colours of his films. Christopher Nolan has the exact same colour blindness I do. Well, as a result, I've never seen that in his films because we're seeing the same colours, mate. So to us, blue is better because we can't see the red and green difference. So we want everything to be blue. By the way, secretly, it's why I also think the movie Heat's incredible. The whole film's fucking blue.
Yep.
It's fucking. I'm not going to go full 65 with you, but you get the point. It's fucking mega in it. That's one of the best parts. You pick the right city to do that with. And then similarly, I would just speculate. I think Christopher Nolan is just autistic like me, bro. And if you're autistic, I always make the joke, what was by the numbers? It was a fucking intervention between Richard and me experiencing the real world, going, Richard, but they're lying. We know they're lying. Yeah, I know, Thorin, but they're just liars, bro. Yeah, but if they keep lying, then they do all this evil shit. Yeah, people do evil shit though, bro. But why can't they just be good people? They're evil. It was like that for fucking 8 years. And it was good because in the middle of it, we made jokes, but it wasn't just that for fucking years and years and years. So I think Christopher Nolan, like me, is like, here's when I read the Odyssey, how I explained how it was all done. And he doesn't want it to be, put it this way, he would hate a David Lynch film, bro. He could never watch a David Lynch film. He'd be like, but why did that happen? It's like, well, there isn't really a reason, I was just vibing with it. I thought it was cool sport dwarfing, but he would never be able to accept that.
But I'm coming from it from the love of myths and Jungian psychology. And for me, the magic is the point of loving mythology. And I don't need it explained. And it's also just incredibly cringe, in my opinion, in this movie that they include all of the sea people stuff. And for those of you who don't know, the sea people that are constantly mentioned in this, are they in the Odyssey? No. Are they in Greek literature? No. How do we know about them? Well, there was something called the Greek Dark Ages that happened. There was... Okay, so in around 1200 BC is when the Mycenaean era, this is when we think the sack of Troy happened and all of this, around 1200 BC, right? And after 1200 BC, there was a complete Greek societal collapse. So those ancient Greek societies all pretty much disappeared. The big cities were destroyed. And we get into hundreds of years later, classical Greece. Okay. But these are new cities for the most part. Mycenae is no longer really inhabited, right? Mycenae is where Agamemnon's from. The old centers of power change into new centers of power. And then you have, the rise of Athens, right? So the thing is that there was some sort of thing that was happening. And we know this from Egyptian art because the Egyptians were out there clapping these sea people. They were not conquered by the sea people, but there is some theories by historians that the sea people were coming from somewhere probably in the east and invading the eastern part of the Mediterranean. And it could have been part of the Greek Dark Age collapse. Although there is also lots of records of drought and civil unrest and everything like that as well. So it's very unclear. But the way it's used in this film is like, first off, the sea people aren't explained. So you literally have to be somebody like me who knows about that. And then
why do you?
Huh?
To me,
because
to me, the whole thing they represent, Monty, is an unknown other that is threatening to take over your civilization if, as is the central theme of the whole movie, you break these bonds between your states. Because remember, Greece wasn't one country. It was a bunch of city-states. Hence why they all unified around Agamemnon and Menelaus to go to battle in Troy. They even show it in this. It was in the other Troy. You actually have to almost press gang people in that. You have to go to the little Odysseus guy and go, I know it's not really your fight, mate, but I'm your king. You have to come and join me. Like, I'd supersede you. That's like, to me, the whole point is there's not an extra hour. They can't do anything about the sea people. That's just some threat that's coming that we know is going to be shit hot if we don't all change our ways,
But why? It breaks the suspension of disbelief to call them the sea people, to not show them, to, have them be so vague or maybe not even real. Like, I find it very distracting in this movie. And I also just don't think it's going to make sense to a lot of people who watch it. I mean, maybe to some people they'll get what you're talking about, but it is like a very specific reference.
To me, that's what the whole end of the movie was. It's what he was saying to Penelope. It's what he was saying to Athena. It's what he was saying to fucking, I can't remember the name, the one that was with the Lotus Eaters. He was saying it to all this shit. Also, I'm missing something. I'll tell you a criticism I've never seen anyone address. It's how I know everyone's a fraud. You know the movie Troy from 2004? What was my biggest criticism? Do you remember, Monty?
No.
Doesn't show the gods. They're not in it. They're not in the whole movie. There's not a single one ever shown on screen for 1 second. No one minds that, by the way. Christopher Nolan's a dickhead because he didn't put enough of the gods on screen. I did talk about that. He didn't put enough of them on screen. The Troy, you all see all of... I wonder if they... by the way, I do know you watch these movies. I just don't think people actually bother paying attention to shit. I think they just say whatever they want about the movie. And
we did talk about the issues... we did talk about the potential issues when our Troy conversation, because I talked about, how present they are.
But
in the
I can tell
text.
why he didn't do it, because that was like the.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember his name. If
It's
people
goofy.
don't get it, it's because how much more ambitious do you want the film to be, bro? This is already one of the most ambitious movies ever made by someone as a giant blockbuster. By the way, do you know how ballsy Christopher Nolan is? He was willing to literally let himself take a giant L with everyone else's infinite money glitch that he is the only one who has over an old fucking book from thousands of years ago. Mate, the idea this guy's just like a sellout or just falling in it, you're mental, bro. You're just off the reservation, mate.
So in regards to the gods, like it's very hard to do correctly. And, if you want to see
you end up with Jason and the Argonauts or Clash of the Titans. Yeah.
Clash of the Titans. Go watch Clash of the Titans. It's fucking hokey. Like, you don't want that. Trust me, you don't want that.
People will show you a clip on Twitter. It doesn't work as well in real life.
I'm totally down with them not including the gods. But my point is that Christopher Nolan has this fundamental urge to over-explain shit. And it does ruin, in some sense, the mystique of the mythology.
I think it made it better personally, but whatever.
And it's like, well, I have to explain, why exactly why they wouldn't be fooled necessarily by the Trojan horse. So I'm going to put it in the water because, if it was just a Trojan horse, they wouldn't pick it up. And then when they get there, they're going to do all these tests on it. It's like, Nolan, that is fucking unnecessary. The story is they took it into Troy because they thought it was a gift. We do not have to explain it more than that.
This is like 5 minutes of the movie, by the way.
And also,
it's repeated
stuff, though. I think his interpretation
stuff.
of the Trojan horse is probably the best thing in the film.
Put it this way, you know what people want is they want that one like we've all seen with a load of wood nailed in.
Yeah.
And it just looks like a child's toy.
Yeah.
that is way more insulting to the idea that this is any kind of like a realistic world at all. His looks like some sort of weird artifact that like is almost too big for a human to have made. I mean, coming out there. I know what you mean. I found that
there was a joke.
It looks cool.
There was a joke in Red Dwarf, which is a British sci-fi comedy that sort of parodies Star Trek, essentially, that was written by Doug Naylor. And basically, like, they're talking about the Trojan horse. And Craig Charles's character, Lister, goes, so basically what you're telling me is, right, the Trojans and the Greeks have been fighting for 10 years. Then one day, all the Greeks just mysteriously aren't there. And they've left, in their stead, a giant horse with just enough space inside to fit in the fucking legion with full spears and shield kit. And from this, we get the saying, beware of Greeks bearing gifts. Why isn't it beware of Trojans, the complete smegheads? And so obviously,
notice how,
but it's a myth. That's the point. This is where Nolan doesn't.
I can solve this for you instantly, Mark. This isn't a myth. This is a movie, mate. This is a movie Christopher Nolan made with his interpretation of a book.
Look,
you can go as mad as you want about how you wanted it to be different, and you prefer the Odyssey. That is irrelevant to this film, bro.
All that matters is one of the things I don't like about Nolan.
All that matters is the following: does it work in the film? If you disagree, it works in the film. That's fine. But if someone else thinks it works, then it ain't the movie for you, bro. That's the answer.
I think it wastes time. I think it wastes time and it's distracting and it's unnecessary.
What I find weird is, you say that though, let's just fucking skip ahead. We can do the other cast and shit later. What's weird is I think that all ends up being in service of the actual, one of the most clever reinterpretations of the idea of the Odyssey I have ever seen in my life, which is that he took this real concept of Zeus's law, of the idea that when strangers come to you, if people don't get this, because that actually wasn't over-explained. It's the idea that when a stranger comes to you,
under-explained, if anything.
This is why the Odysseus angle, by the way, this is how masterful Christopher Nolan is. He did it to you again with Fagin. That was actually fucking Matt Damon at the beginning of the movie as the old man coming in. You look at it, and even I who know the story goes, oh, what he's going to do is he's going to set up foreshadowing that he's going to come in. That was actually him coming in. That was actually so cleverly done, because again, he shows you the same scene, but it means something different 2.5 hours later. Yeah. So basically, the premise is, if someone comes to you, a random person, the reason you bring them in and give them food is, what if that was one of the gods or Zeus himself coming to you, and then you turned him away? And so as a way to like show this, like, we all have this unifying philosophy in life, you do that. Now that is so masterfully contrasted with the idea of, people could abuse that, couldn't they? Yep. Then they could play on that. That's the suitors and all the years, which ties into the Odysseus story. And then the reinterpretation, which is so misunderstood to me, is this notion that goes, he was just a PTSD war veteran. You've just added that. You decided that and went into the cinema. I never saw it that way. What I saw it as is this. Odysseus, in the moment of the Iliad and the Trojan War, comes up with the only possible way someone can think of by a form of almost sleight of hand to get some people inside the impregnable walls which they can't defeat, and you have to hope they basically come out on the beach like in Troy and fight you, and you have to win them in a battle, right? When they don't do that, they go, fuck it, we're just going to go siege mode, basically. You'll never get in there, and you'll be there for another 10 years is the joke, right? You'll be just bringing more people, and you'll never... So he comes up with what, in the moment, intellectually, is a brilliant idea. His problem is he didn't think about the fact that, like, that actually does completely violate a basic rule of, like, respect between peoples, even if they're your enemy. By the way, think of the end of the 2004 Troy movie, which ends the same way the Iliad does, with that scene where Priam comes and asks Achilles for the body. That's one of the most beautiful scenes in the film, because it shows that even though they were sworn enemies, there's something more than just the petty dealings of men and beasts, as it were. There's what the gods care about and what, like, the afterlife's like, and that does supersede that. And that dynamic is really interesting, because to me, actually, what he's really feeling bad about is the idea he basically got all of the Trojan people genocided, except for the few that escape in the Aeneid, the sequel, blah, 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 whatever, which we made the joke about in Troy anyway, where it's like, hey, not you, see you in the Aeneid, or whatever, like, and he just fucks off down that too with the shield or whatever. But anyway, the point is
very cringe.
What an interesting reinterpretation. And how do they back this up? They then have it that when he opens the gates, as we said, that may as well be Darth Vader walking in with a bunch of stormtroopers to kill everyone. And also, notice how, when you're watching the movie before any one about the Iliad, you're rocking with the Greeks because, fuck it, yeah, we're finally taking over. How horrifying is it to see that scene where he's just walking around and you may as well just be in a village in Vietnam and people just raping and killing people and hanging people and fucking poking an old man's eye out. It's outrageous the shit you're seeing. Because remember, that's not war. I don't know if you know this. I've been watching loads of Sharp recently. In war, if you're in the British Army, which is so maligned, you do know we used to literally hang people who would, like, rape and loot, by the way. You'd be hung. You wouldn't be warned and lashed. You would be killed for doing that. That was the penalty, because the notion was we're fighting their army because of some military conflict. We're not genociding their people. We're not going to the ends of the earth to kill all their people and rape them and do that. There's a certain decorum and standard that makes you British, and that's what you're supposed to uphold. Whether that was obviously the case or not, I'm sure there was many minor cases where it wasn't. That essentially shows, in this case, he has unleashed ultimate evil in Agamemnon. And I thought, actually, what an amazing way to reinterpret why he chooses to keep eating the lotus flowers and what is the name of that character that he stays with? The one that was Shelley's Sinon. Calypso. The notion, think about this, Monty. Every version of the Odyssey ever is he can't get home because Poseidon's delaying him. And then also his men keep fucking up and doing stupid shit all the time, and he can't wait everyone. The idea that actually on some unconscious level, he won't let himself go home because he doesn't deserve to, because he's committed such evil. Why does he deserve to get to go home and have a nice life? I think that was like, I'm not trolling. I think that's actually brilliant. I don't even necessarily agree with it, but I thought what an amazing, complete world paradigm shifting perspective on this whole story. And I'm pretty sure he came up with that first and then wrote the film backwards.
While Odysseus and his men were starving on the ocean, I bet you they would have loved nothing more than to have a nutritionally complete meal like Huel. Here I have a massive bag of their Black Edition powder, and each serving has 40 grams of protein, and it mixes with water or milk in about 30 seconds. But it's not just a protein shake. It is a complete meal that you have instead of food. It has 27 essential vitamins and minerals and no artificial sweeteners, colors, or flavors. Also contains a lot of fiber, unlike many other shakes that you might make. They even have ready to go bottles like this right here, which you could purchase from stores or order online. So you can see it has 35 grams of protein and 7 grams of fiber. This one's chocolate. Tastes amazing, by the way. It's delicious, and it does, in fact, keep you very full. It's also 50% off online for new customers. And of course, that is spelled Huel, Huel. I've been really enjoying using this when I don't have a lot of time to eat food. Also helps meet a lot of fundamental nutritional requirements and is a very well-rounded, nutritionally diverse product. So you can get it many different ways. Like I say, you get it in the bottle, you can get it in the powder form and shake it yourself, or you can blend it up with ice and just goes down so easy, guys, and it makes your life a lot more simple, especially when you don't have time to cook. Whether you don't actually have that time, you're feeling a little lazy, this is a great way to make sure that you are actually getting proper nutrition in a simple form, right? And there's a ton of different flavors as well. I was drinking like an iced mocha one the other day. Tasted great. So there's a limited time offer that we have for you guys that makes healthy eating simple. Get Huel today with our exclusive code of 15% off online with our code LFN at Huel.com/LFN. This is new customers only. And thank you to Huel for partnering and supporting our show. Remember, guys, that one of the best ways to support us here at Foreplay is to support our sponsors. So Huel is something, comes in so many different forms. You might want to give it a try. Lots of different flavors as well. So if you guys are looking for a quick and nutritional option as a meal replacement, go ahead and check out Huel. That's Huel.com/LFN. Don't be hungry like Odysseus. Grab yourself some Huel.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I cannot understand how anybody could look at this film and think it is a woke movie, when one of the things it's ultimately lamenting is that for us to emerge victorious, we've essentially doomed the concept of a high trust society forever, right? No one will ever be able to trust strangers ever again. Which
about the most anti-woke idea imaginable,
right?
In it at all.
Like, how do you fit that in if you're the people who say, my bodies aren't real and we're all just global citizens? And how do you, where's the compatibility there? And also the reveal that essentially the big bad, the people overseas that are doing all these horrifying things, which you are the sea people. You are the fucking monsters over there that are defiling the norms and
it's also not about other people a lot of the time. It's also about the Greeks and the suitors, led by Antinous, who are doing it as well. It's a complete collapse from the inside.
Yeah. And with that, let me also just get onto the Sinon stuff, which right. First of all, if you can never cast a trans person in any context, in any movie ever, or it makes it war, why not just say that? Just be honest about what you. I
mean, their logic, quite literally, Richard, is if Christopher Nolan just cannot have Elliot Page in a movie.
Yes.
That's it. And by the way, what they don't get about that is a losing battle. Even if you disagree or whatever your opinion about transgender people are, you are not going to get all the other people who are just normal people to say, I'm going to pretend they don't exist. They don't exist for me.
Yeah.
That'll never happen. That's just a ridiculous premise to imagine.
One of the critiques that I saw, that this is one of the things that the chuds think they've got it, they've figured it out. We're unimpeachable on this argument, is that because she is obviously a former woman, a biological woman that transitioned into being a man, therefore she has maintained feminine traits, and she's 5'3" and doesn't have a lot of muscle mass, right? She cannot be a warrior, right?
Oh, of course not.
But it is explained textually in the film explicitly that Sinon, Odysseus' cousin, by the way, right? Which is, because I saw people complaining, why make this random person the moral center of the film? It's his cousin.
Big Odyssey fans.
Yeah, big Odyssey fans, of course, right? So anyway, Sinon, it is quite explicitly stated, is like just some chubby
It's like the runt of the litter, isn't it? It's like the little guy you'd never send to war as a fucking soldier.
But because he does it by essentially conscription, a lottery, and he is coerced into going and fighting with Odysseus, and Odysseus didn't want to intervene because of the relationship. This is what's explained in the movie. That ultimately, yes, Sinon is a ridiculous figure in armor because Sinon is not a soldier by any conventional
but the difference is
and
that
it's a contrast against the Antonius guy as well. He was supposed to be some big top-notch shit. I could be a but that's the point. Who took your place instead?
Is that Antinous is capable but is a coward. Right.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Literally
if anything,
avoided.
Right, Monty, it's to show the old thing of it's not about the size of the dog, it's about the heart.
Which explicitly shows at the end when they're having the fight. And by the way, he's just fucking. He said, "Put down the weapons," and he hides behind the column.
But in any case, it's also about it reinforces a key theme in the original text of the Odyssey too, which is this idea of duty. Right, and Odysseus. He spends 10 years trying to get home. Calypso's literally like, why don't you just stay here and fuck me forever and we'll just live together? Nausicaa, who's not in the movie.
An actual nymph, by the way.
Yeah.
Calypso's an actual nymph, so trust me, it's good. It's where we get nymphomania from. Right?
And Nausicaa is a princess who he's telling the story to, and Nausicaa and her her parents, the king and queen, literally give Odysseus a ship and send him home. And he's like, "No, I'm not going to stay here with you, princess." He fucks Circe, by the way, too, in the book. He's fucking everybody in the book, and he could not go home at any time. And yet he still goes home.
Circe. There's a whole spin-off about that guy. He has a kid. He's piping Circe for a year.
Yes.
In the Odyssey.
Yeah. And so, like, I do think the Sinon stuff reinforces the sense of duty that Odysseus himself feels. And that, this is, Sinon represents, this idea that you had to go do this thing, right?
Yes. So here's the thing. So Sinon is immediately killed, right? By the way, everyone was doing the meme, right? They were all making these shit AI memes of Elliot Page, like in Troy, like that fucking scene at the start where he just kills that giant.
Epic. Yeah, exactly.
Right? But the spin being that Achilles dies because everyone was saying she was Achilles when she never was Achilles, right?
Literally just a stupid little girl's rumor. Hey, have you heard this thing about old too? You made that a fact and based a year-long hate campaign on it.
And sorry, I should say, it's hard because the point I'm trying to make next is how could Christopher Nolan ever not cast Elliot Page when he's established that he works with all of his actors?
Yep.
And so what? The one you won't bring back is the trans one. Well, how's that going to play out in the media? So anyway, Sinon, right, as we've now established, is quite feeble and small and gets killed and isn't a warrior. And then instead, when they
by the way, is even used expressly not as one, Richard. They used they are themselves tricked, which is their whole beef in the movie, because it needs to be plausible that this is just the wimpy warrior left over at the end who's the only one guarding a fucking gift. Like they even have the implication that like they don't want you to actually break and say what's really happening.
Yeah.
So the person themselves isn't even treated like a real warrior who's guarding something, are they?
Yeah, exactly. And then when he comes back in the Hades scene where Agamemnon gets that powerful speech, right? Yeah, he says, you made me the face of your deception, essentially. You told the lie that it was a gift and I didn't know you were inside. And Odysseus says, I was there with you. I needed you to believe and tell the lie convincingly because it was the only way they were going to take the horse in. And Sinon says, but I would have told the lie anyway, for you're my king, you're my lord, right? Now you've made me a liar. And for those that don't know, Sinon is a figure in classical literature. I mean, by the way, if you're a transphobe, you might think Christopher Nolan has done the most base thing ever, casting a trans person as a classical figure that was used to represent deception in multiple texts, including at least 2 Shakespearean plays. Right? You might consider that based if you're a chud, but you're a fucking moron to boot, so you didn't even know this was a thing. No. But Sinon is in the 8th fucking ring of hell in Dante's Inferno, right? And because it's where the fraudsters and the tricksters and the deceivers
the worst ones,
yeah. And Sinon is held up as an example of being a terrible liar. And then I can't remember which. There's a Shakespearean, I think it's Henry. It's one of the Henrys, Henry VI maybe, and it says and I will use like honeyed words like Sinon, and I will have myself another Troy, like something like this, right? So Sinon is the figure of all lies. Now, what Christopher Nolan has done, again, because he's making things, he's putting his own spin on things. Sinon can't ever be complicit with the lie because Sinon didn't know it was a lie at the point that Sinon was told the lie. And so to have Elliot Page cast in this role of being somebody small, somebody that gets like manipulated by bigger forces, even manipulated by, her own, because I do think it's a more powerful message. Now, yes, you could have cast a small effeminate man, but Christopher Nolan works with actors he's got before. And this is the other point I want to make on this topic. If you thought Christopher Nolan was making like a movie where it's like trans your kids, we got a trans actor, yes, and that's like some subtext to the movie, which it absolutely isn't. And if you see that, you're mentally ill, right? Then why has Elliot Page not worked since transitioning? If Hollywood is a Jewish conspiracy, which is what I got told on my Twitter feed.
But this way, why isn't she Superman, Richard, basically?
Yeah.
Logically, this should make her more successful. They all want to ram it down in front. Why isn't she Superman? Or why wasn't she He-Man in He-Man, the new movie?
This is how you know these people are so fucking out to lunch, because
Yeah.
any scrutiny of their basic conspiracy theory unravels. You know, it's Hollywood is a Jewish conspiracy to take away traditional masculinity, and that's why they're casting Elliot Page. Well, Elliot Page should be the biggest star in all of Hollywood then, but he isn't. Elliot Page has not only, according to rumors, was paid the least on this movie, and almost Christopher Nolan did it as just like a favor, essentially. Yeah. Which I imagine Christopher Nolan is a good guy and loyal.
Seems like a compassionate guy, doesn't he?
Yeah, of course. But like, if you go look at the projects he's been involved with since transitioning, it's really bad. Like they're doing, they're like making their own documentaries and stuff now. I also don't think that just because this individual transitioned, they should be like blackballed and put out. But what does that tell you about your supposed conspiracy theory about Hollywood? You're wrong. Those things aren't real because, as I said, Elliot Page doesn't get work anymore.
You can just boil it down to this. Was it bad casting? No, it was good casting for the role. Was it a bad performance?
I mean, but
no,
didn't I
it was
also
a good
tell you,
performance for the role. I thought Elliot Page did a great job in this role.
I told everyone with ScarJaw, Christopher Nolan is really good at knowing exactly what he's going to get from an actor. And he will cast people, you'll be like, do you know about that? And then they just do their job fine. And they just totally
I literally got called for saying Lupita Nyong'o is attractive. I said something like, the only requirement of Helen in this is to be hot. And someone said, well, Lupita Nyong'o is not hot.
By the way, what's funny,
not
Richard,
beautiful.
is you even, as a random aside, just because we've spent so much time around each other, Richard will even know I'm not someone who traditionally likes people who look like that. I can say that person in the actual moving pictures looks way better than they do in the still image. Yeah. Like, listen, is it the most beautiful person? But of course not. Again, by the way, Christopher Nolan, as Mike pointed out, isn't doing that in the movie. He's not doing the fantastical. He's just doing it's a good-looking woman.
Yes.
That's it.
And do you know what? Do you know what I got called? Right, somebody replied with, "Don't listen to this guy. He's a gay Jew." That's what I got. I mean, like, people are so fucking brain broken on this topic, bro. The abuse I got for just saying, like, the chud's going to have to hold an L on this one, which is absolutely right. It's crazy. Now, just to wrap up the Elliot Page talking point, and I know it's probably an uncomfortable topic for some people, but there's no, like, we're never going to be that type of people to avoid elephants in rooms, right? Now, I can go along with the argument of bad casting. I can go along with the argument of bad casting. I could probably think of some other guys that could have played a similar role to that. By the way, one of them, funnily enough, would have been Tom Holland, right? If I was suggesting names. I think he's still at that age and he's maintained a lot of his boyish features, right?
And along the same lines, notice he didn't cast Elliot Page as Telemachus.
Yes, exactly, right? And so what I'll say there is I can go along with, does Elliot Page need to be in the movie as an argument, right? But performance, there's absolutely no way you can say Elliot Page did a bad job in terms of performance. There's absolutely no way you can make that argument whatsoever. And that's just another thing. Then if the performance is good, why can't we work back from that position and go, well, de facto, then the casting was fine. Why can we not go that way? I mean, like, put it this way, at no point when I was watching this movie did having a, Asian Canadian guy say, "We're from Ithaca," it didn't take me out of the movie. I don't know how fucked up in the head you would have to be to sit down for your 3-hour fucking mythology movie and for that to be the deal breaker, because ultimately, like, I mean, that was the other tell on it, right? Robert Pattinson's cast, no problems with that, no? Right, and we get all the way to Lupita Nyong'o. How dare you? It's woke. She's black. You can't do that. That's crazy. Why weren't you upset when we weren't casting Greeks? If you want to preserve your fucking classical Greek film, by the way, a literal myth, but it's not even historical, right? None of it's fucking real, right? Which is so bananas to then anchor the argument to, well, it's antiquity. The fucking sack of Troy and the Trojan horse is a story. It's a made-up story.
Well, also the Mycenaean period, it's not even, I think, entirely clear that those people were ethnically the same people as the classical Greeks, because, like I said, about the sea people and the invasion and the mass death that occurred, right?
Yeah.
And also with who cares, man? It was over 3,000 years ago.
Like I say, I'm not even because some people, some conservative commentators have been reasonable about it. Never thought I would say this on this podcast. Ben Shapiro sort of did.
Not bad take, actually.
He did the most balanced, rightoid review that I saw. And usually Ben Shapiro's movie takes on art are just
I also
whack.
thought he just played to the crowd because he had a lot of people would have been loving him if he'd have said some shit.
But I exposed myself, unfortunately, to all of this right-wing critique. And a lot of it is just so disingenuous. Like Elliot Page doesn't take me out the movie. I think there's lots of interesting stuff to be said about the character of Sinon and why they went the way they did in changing the story. So Sinon creates essentially a moral framework and a secondary mission for Odysseus besides getting home to obviously return the shame of his now deceased.
Which, by the way, is a really effective moment. It's kind of dope, isn't it, when he hands him that thing and he realizes what it is. By the way, I also agree on that particular piece of casting. Here's what's funny about that one is that one shows you not only didn't read the Odyssey, you don't even know who Christopher Nolan is because Elliot Page, when they were called Ellen Page, is in Inception. Christopher Nolan is one of the most loyal directors I've ever seen because here's the thing. You can say Scorsese is. Mate, Scorsese isn't knocking out. No, Scorsese doesn't make a lot of money if people don't know. A lot of his movies are just like break even, don't make money. Sometimes he gets patronage, Christopher Nolan is making movies where every single one is such a high budget and so much of a gamble, they all have to kill it at the box office. If you don't know, even Tenet killed it at the box office. I believe there's a stat that of original movies, not adaptations, Tenet is like top 5 in the 2020s of like movies for box office. Like no matter what you think, this guy is like guaranteed home run financially every time. So actually in that scenario, I took it like you did, Richard. I thought that's an example of someone going, you know what? I already use loads of people. By the way, Himesh Patel, the person you're referring to, he was in Tenet also, wasn't he? Like I take it actually as what he was doing in that scenario was, you know what? I'm doing a massive ensemble cast film and I've got a small role, which otherwise is fairly throwaway, by the way. In fact, you'll never get someone with a name value of the level of Elliot Page to play that role. Probably it's just a throwaway role. You know what? I'll give this person some work. That's someone who, listen, I actually see them beyond just what do they identify as and is written on a fucking piece of paper. I actually see them as a person I worked with. Maybe I'm in friends with them for all I know.
And let's be clear, right? On these press junkets, when the celebrities, again, like Lupita and Nyong'o, are saying crazy shit about Homer, and we all saw the clip of Elliot Page talking about how, gender is a spectrum and all this stuff, which was the joke I made, saying that line being in the film was a little bit on the nose. It's not there. And again, to see it, this movie is just a Rorschach test for how much of a rightoid judge you actually are, I think. But here's the thing. That's their opinion outside of the film. Christopher Nolan's not saying this. No. Christopher Nolan, by the way, I don't know if you know this as well, because I should have brought this up when we were talking about the translation. That thing about him only using the feminist translation is a lie. And
I heard he also checked out some of the other ones too.
The journalist recanted it. He read every version he had access to, and then worked
It's unbelievable that somebody as thorough as Christopher Nolan wouldn't look at multiple translations.
Well, do you want to know the other funny thing, Monty? Because I was looking into this. Now, the version I've read multiple times is the Robert Fagel's translation, that's my
favorite.
Yeah, which is widely regarded as the go-to if you're going to read it in English. Do you want to know what's hilarious about that? When that got released, it received worldwide praise for being a politically correct interpretation of Homer, and specifically with how it dealt with women. And now the chuds are going, but the Fagels version, now you read the feminist version. Robert Fagels was praised for being a feminist when he did it. So I remember
that when his translation came out.
Yeah, I just don't know what you want, guys. Like, what can we ever have a black person in a film and you guys just act normal about it? Can we ever have a trans person in a film and you just act normal about it? Like, I guess not. I guess we're going to retcon all the history,
So here's the thing: on a surface level, take it extracted from the movie, I do think there is an observable pattern that the difference is they will do things that are historically you expect to see a white or a European in a position. Like they'll do like a story where the BBC will make a film where one of the kings of England is black and is clearly of African origin. Yeah. Right? That is real.
There's a sensible conversation to be had about that topic, though.
But here's the problem.
Yeah.
First of all, that's barely present in this movie. As Richard said, you could have forced it a million times over, much, much harder. You're not even trying to be super subversive. If anything, I actually take it more as there are certain check boxes you have to make a movie of this scale. And Christopher Nolan cleverly paid lip service, but didn't really do them in a subversive manner as presented. Also, similarly, on the whole gender issue, yes, I think it is potentially a concern if we just go around saying to like kids, for example, who watch films, this, by the way, is an R-rated movie, children wouldn't be watching it. But if you were to put into children's entertainment a lot of people where they say, I am X, but they are scientifically not X, I think there's something a bit sinister about the way you're trying to fool kids there, and that you can't just tell the kid, by the way, this person, for whatever reasons, wants to present this certain way, but they were born another way. I don't see why the fact would ever be the offensive in that scenario if presented in a compassionate manner like that. Yeah. That's certainly a discussion you could have, but I just don't buy the idea that that's what was being done in this case. And what's even worse is I've always thought the best Trojan horse that actually woke people could use, but by the way, woke people are just the mirror opposite dickheads of chuds, so they're just evil in the other way and see nothing this way. They don't really want you to actually be won over by their ideas. You want to submit to their ideas and just do it. So I've always thought the thing I hate is that actually we can't have what they pretend we're having. So they'll argue, Richard, no, what should happen is, because we live in a society where we have black people and foreign people who aren't of our original people's descent, can't they be actors? Well, of course they can be. I would never deny someone's personal agency. Similarly, if I'm making loads of movies about King Henry VIII and things, what can none of the black actors ever be in? Even if, by the way, it's like Idris Elba, he can't be a role in that. Like, I have to make it that he was like a Moor that can. But no, here's what I hate is that we can't go the whole hog. I hate the idea that we're pretending when you act. Like, it's why I hate biopics, because they cast every fucking person to look like the photo. Yeah. You idiot, it's acting. The whole point, it's like Peter O'Toole famously, supposedly said to like fucking Dustin Hoffman on Marathon Man. He supposedly turned, oh no, it was Laurence and Olivier. Supposedly Dustin Hoffman was doing the method acting thing, staying up for 3 days and going, and then supposedly Laurence Olivier just goes, have you ever tried acting, dear boy? Because he was a fucking master and he understood I'm playing a character, you idiot. I'm embodying a character. You don't have to look like them, because if you're brilliant, it doesn't matter what you look like. I will feel the character come through you. I will feel it speak through you like a medium. By the way, if you channel someone, you don't go, you need to look like my dad too. You mad fuck. They just have to sound like your dad and embody his spirit. So I wish there was a world, by the way, I'll give you the best example. This is why this guy's a dickhead too. You know why Peter Dinklage is a fucking imbecile? Because he suggested you could only be a dwarf to play a dwarf. You idiot. We let you play a character that was a dwarf, but are all your other movies all based around dwarves? I hope not. I hope that because you're sick at acting, you can play any role. If you were amazing, I want you to play any. I wish we could go the other way, bro. And it was back to just who are the actors? Let's do parts. How about that? That would be a great idealistic world, wouldn't it?
Yep. I don't know if there was a graphic novel character that corresponded to this, but he was great in X-Men Days of Future Past in a character that didn't have to be.
I don't think that was a dwarf, actually.
No, he's not. He's not a dwarf.
Yeah, but he's good in it anyway. It's fine.
Yeah. That's he was the general that created the Sentinel program. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Which is great.
But it's the
great
point that we hit this like critical mass of stupidity. I think the worst one was when it was Bryan Cranston was playing.
He was playing Bolivar Trask, who, by the way, nowhere's a dwarf. The point is, Peter Dinklage is 6 and we didn't care. We didn't even just go the whole time. By the way, if you find that jarring, the whole time you're like, it's Peter Dinklage. You don't see that. In fact, the joke is, I don't even know Peter Dinklage. I just know fucking Tyrion Lannister. I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, like the other big one that happened in the media where it was ridiculous was Bryan Cranston played. He was in a wheelchair. He did a wheelchair movie. I think it was a remake of another French movie, and it's about him, bonding with the carer and all this stuff. And they said, why can't we have actual, paraplegics? Why can't we have paraplegics in these acting roles? And it's like, well, listen, put it this way. I'm not saying there isn't a wicked crippled actor out there, but like they've cornered the fucking market on wheelchair movies.
Crazy,
that's what I mean. Like every time I cast someone in a wheelchair, I got to go to this one guy. He's gonna be in more movies than fucking Pedro Pascal, isn't he? So you've got to be.
In fact, I'll give you the maddest example. Here's the maddest example. By their logic, Richard, if you actually are Bryan Cranston, you should actually have to cripple yourself, then you're allowed to be in the movie. That's how stupid what we're doing is right now.
Yeah. So to go the other way, I always say this, right? The people think they're being really clever when they see the race swap roles. And look, there is a sensible conversation to be had about why does it mostly go in one direction. But here's what I'll also add. People always go, well, you couldn't have a Ryan Gosling playing Nelson Mandela.
Of course.
Why not? Make that film. Why does no one go and make that
And by
movie?
the way, here's where I'll be with you instantly. Don't just say that as a gag. Mean it.
Yeah.
Know that actually it would be dope if someone like fucking Russell Crowe decided to play like Martin Luther King. If he thought he could pull that off and he really cared about the character, do it. And then if there's a backlash, I'm on your side, mate. I'll battle him with you.
Exactly.
I'll say, how dare you say that someone like that can't do it because of his skin colour? How dare you judge him? We can have that conversation.
The thing that I hate about where rightoid art has essentially devolved to, they can't really conceive of big ideas beyond owning the libs.
By the way, it's the classic thing. They're just caught on the surface symbol, bro. They can't get beyond it.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know if you've seen this thing with Elon Musk. Elon Musk first came out and said, and this was predicated only on the casting. Elon Musk came out and said Christopher Nolan had desecrated the Odyssey. He hasn't. He's preserved it now for all time in cinema. Yep. Right? It's the exact opposite of what you're saying.
More people will read the Odyssey as a result of this movie.
No one's done more in the last 100 years than this guy.
Yeah, right. So you've got that, right. But then he also said, "I will put up $100 million of my own money, right, to make a true and faithful adaptation of the Odyssey." But Mel Gibson has to direct it because we need a based right wing director. And the argument for this also, of course, was like, oh, well, look how realistic Apocalypto was. I'm not even uncracking that.
I know
one.
it's mental.
I'm not uncracking that one.
By the way, look, if the stupid culture war is going to get us more versions of the Odyssey being made that Elon Musk paid for, I'm down, man. There's
another thing. There isn't going to be one. There isn't going to be one, Monty. Elon Musk isn't going to pay for that, and none of the rightoids would ever chip in a penny for it. In fact, it's worse because he's Elon Musk and he doesn't know how to read the room. Do you know what the most recent version? It came up a day ago, Richard. He's updated it. Well, here's the thing. Mel Gibson, it's like, by the way, Elon Musk has just done the shit gag from CS Twitter. JL has been in talks to join Spirit, but Spirit have said no. That's the gag, right? I've never thought that was funny. Mel Gibson never said he wanted to make this movie, you fucking imbecile. He does passion projects. So instead, Elon Musk
he's just got uncancelled, and now you're doing this to me. Like, guys,
listen to this. Listen to what he's actually going to do. This is how uninteresting Elon Musk is. Elon Musk is going to use Grok Imagine to make a full-length version of it. That is going to be so shit. It is unreal, you moron. None of you'll watch it. When it comes out, none of you'll watch it. None of you.
He also says historically accurate, which is just hilarious in the context.
Yeah, I know.
It's also just not even a good idea.
I can guarantee you that until this culture war brew, I bet he really thought this was a historic tale. I genuinely think.
I want to talk about just like the craftsmanship of this movie because look, I have my own issues with it. I find parts of it distracting. I still think it's a good movie. But part of the reason why it's such a good movie is that the craftsmanship is so exquisite. And I was reading interviews with Christopher Nolan where he was saying that even down to the lighting, he wanted it to look like it was really lit by fire. But obviously the problem with fire is you need a lot of it to light up a scene, and it's hot and it's dangerous. And so what he did was he basically bought an LED plant and then had them make thousands of LED panels of different sizes that could mimic firelight and use those to light the movie, which is fucking awesome. I think even the design, one of the things I really loved about this film was that it has this eeriness to it, right? It does feel spooky. It's almost like a horror movie in parts, which is, by the way,
loads of the scenes are horror movies and they're going to go down as classics.
Yes, but this is a big departure from the original text, which often contains a lot of humor in these moments, right? Which Nolan has very deliberately removed.
Yeah, they get the Cyclops drunk, right? In the
yes.
original,
and also there's the
text.
whole like nobody/no one, and then
which is whack. I saw one writer. Sorry to cut you off again, Monty, but I saw one writer say by removing the way Odysseus tricked the Cyclops by calling himself nobody, so that all he could scream was "Who did this to you? Nobody, nobody." That apparently that's the most epic line in the whole poem.
It doesn't even work. This is how I know none of you read it, because what your classics teacher would have explained to you there is that joke isn't even the gag of nobody did it. It's that in Greek, the word for nobody is similar to sounding as a verbal gag to the word Odysseus, and that's also what he's playing on. So you also wouldn't get that anyway because they're not speaking ancient Greek, are they? So that would be irrelevant.
So I mean, I do think
he does the exact same thing of Shaun his Hubris by shooting him in the eye when he leaves anyway, doesn't he? So whatever.
I do think it's weaker, but look, if you want to get rid of the humor because you're doing this spooky thing, that's fine. And I do think it's interesting, and tonally it is consistent, right? And it's clear that to me that the Cyclops was inspired by that Goya painting of like Saturn devouring his children, which is so obvious right from the get-go, but it is really disturbing in a way that I would not imagine that scene from reading the poem. We're seeing other iterations
All the
of the Odyssey.
Saw a screenshot and they went, he's even done it sideways like a pussy or like a dick. Here's what they actually did, Monty. If this was in like Tales from the Crypt Keeper, we'd all be hailing this as amazing visual effects. Like what he actually did was make the Cyclops more terrifying than you ever imagined him to be. If he's just a bloke with one big normal central eye like that, it's wacky, mate. That's somehow Monty Python.
Also his like nose is turned. It's like his entire face is
what
twisted.
Happened is, Monty, is you could look head on, it didn't quite fit. You could look sideways, it didn't quite. It was, again, he made it perverse. Like I said, if I just say this scene is done by Del Toro, genius, he's done it again. How does his visionary directing work? But no, that's Christopher Nolan guys who can't do anything and just does stale scenes that have no emotion in them. Yeah.
But what I really appreciate, and just from reading these interviews with Christopher Nolan, like as much as I do not think fundamentally he understands mythology, and that bothers me about this movie, the actual aesthetic experience of watching it and the craftsmanship that goes into it is extraordinary. From the IMAX usage to the, when they took the Trojan horse out, they really dragged it on those logs with hundreds of extras to make it real. To your point, Thorin, about not telling Matt Damon that there are going to be these people flooding into the gates, to the idea that they want to light it with firelight, but they can't do it. So he finds a really expensive but creative alternative solution to make it look super unique, right? The fact that the Cyclops was filmed with a giant puppet that added some CG later. I've heard the actors say that this made it scary for them to be in the scene, which gives them a real ability to act. It's not some fucking Marvel slop on a green screen. This guy is so fucking good at planning the scenes, making them feel real.
I was going to say the best technical working director in terms of a jump up in understanding the craft and technology and what the boundaries of cinema can be since David Fincher really started getting into his groove.
Well, I mean, Eggers is also famous for his, attention to detail and stuff like that. But, Nolan does this at such an extraordinary scope. And he thinks about all of these things. And there was criticism because he said, well, he didn't want the music to be like a classical score because Greek music didn't sound like that. By the way, guys, ancient Greek music, you can go listen to reproductions of it. It sounds super weird. It's very bizarre. But the music, because it sounds a bit odd to the modern ear, really works in creating that eerie tone. I loved how they included like the bowstring twang from Odysseus's bow to like set off the music or to accompany it at points. I thought the score was absolutely extraordinary. So I think, my beefs with it aside, and I understand my beefs mostly come from an appreciation for the original text, and I don't mind, the themes that he's trying to update it for and make a commentary on our modern world, which, by the way, is an important part of adapting and interpreting art, is to make it resonant with the people you are presenting it to, right? And going back to the point about sacking ancient cities, people are not going to identify with that. But realistically, in the classical world, you lose a battle, your men are being killed. Your male children are being killed. Your women are being raped. Your girl children, everybody's being put into slavery who survives, right? It was horrible. And this, you can see it for thousands of years. An example that happened 1,000 years later was like the fall of Persepolis with Alexander the Great, of which there are very detailed accounts of what happened to that city. Horrific. Okay. So they expected this to happen. But I don't think at the end of the day, Christopher Nolan making a summer popcorn flick where Odysseus was like, lol, fuck all those people. We totally sacked their city and I loved it, is going to land. Like, it's just not an emotional thing that'll land. He had a different morality, ancient classical morality. It's like what Thorin was saying about Gladiator, right? Maximus does not have an ancient morality. Okay.
It's actually why some people don't fuck with the Northmen, Monty, because they find it too brutal, like when they're pillaging and because remember, at no point in that movie does it ever imply, and this is bad, you shouldn't have done it. Of course not. You're just fucking winning the day. To the victor go the spoils. It's like, you don't give a fuck in that movie. That's why it has an alien morality.
The Northmen lost money. You know, the Northmen made $75 million on a $75 million budget, and the Odyssey has already made something like $350 million.
Yes.
Right?
By the way, the goalpost moving on that from the Chudosphere is unbelievable because they're
this
going.
This movie's going to get a
They're
billion,
going.
You know?
It's go walk, go broke, and then I'm like, well, it's not broke. It's literally breaking box office records, right? And then they're going, yes, but if it cost in total $625 million if you include marketing, so it's got to go north. This movie's going to make $1 billion, bro. Like,
also, it's going to make another 100 million Blu-ray and streaming. You don't know anything about the modern world. Like, that's you're out of date on that one. I know. It's mental.
But my point is like, you know, my beefs with it aside, I do think it's important for art to be reinterpreted for the time. And just because the Odyssey, you know, this version of the Odyssey exists doesn't mean that Homer's version is deleted from human consciousness, right? And to the point Richard was making, like, if you celebrate classical works, there is nothing that is going to make more people read the Odyssey than this movie coming out. Period.
Well, I mean, look, I think Amazon put a tweet out saying that audiobook sales of the Odyssey, it's like the most purchased. Or you know, like what Nolan has done is unbelievable. And I'll also add one thing to this as well, because we haven't really talked about performances and stuff. But I'll say this in terms of what this is going to do to people's perceptions around certain actors.
Robert Pattinson, who is fucking great in this.
I mean, I think most people were on board with Robbie P at this point, right? I mean, like I said, for me, ever since The Lighthouse, I was like, I'll watch anything. Well, The Lighthouse and Good Time, two movies, right? I'm ride or die with Robbie P now, like 100%. But I thought in this movie to see Tom Holland go from being...
He's a good caster.
Yeah.
You gave him exactly what he could do in it. I think he did a good job.
Yeah, I thought Tom Holland was really good in this. I think it's his best non-cake
I'm not even a fan
movie.
of his. I don't particularly like him. But
I mean, like, I like the Spider-Man. I think he's a great Spider-Man. I mean, I really do. I think he really understands.
He has that
the
vibe
character.
for sure.
Yeah, and I think that works. But I mean, if you're judging an actor's ability by the Spider-Man movies they did, are we talking about a real actor? Now, Andrew Garfield has gone on to do some absolute fucking killer shit. I mean, like Beneath a Silver Lake, and I'll Always Have a Good Cry at Hacksaw Ridge. I don't give a fuck. Andrew Garfield's done some baller stuff. This is the first time I've seen Tom Holland do something where I was like, all right, this motherfucker's, he's got something. I think the John Leguizamo casting is actually
bizarrely
inspired.
Criticized, even though I've got to say, I thought he really killed it.
It was great.
He made that role really memorable. And by the way, there's another gag for you that's real. People, mentor. That's literally the name, you dickhead. That's where the word mentor comes from. You fucking cretin. You're basically the person unironically going, Achilles got shot in his heel. How bloody cliche. You imbecile. The joke's on you. The joke's on you, boys.
I couldn't believe when I saw that tweet where it was like, it was like Christopher Nolan. Let's call him mentor. I'm like, this can't be fucking
nuts in it.
Like, but anyway,
he really plugged at my heartstrings, bro. Do you think so? Like, I
can't believe Shakespeare would name the central romantic character Romeo. How? What?
I know.
Like, what's mad is if you think about it, I never even really took this that much from the Odyssey. He made John Leguizamo. Bear in mind, because he isn't Guillermo del Toro. Obviously, the dog can't talk, you fox. So he almost makes John Leguizamo a human version of the dog who was seamlessly kicked around, but is loyal and is the only only one that would know. I think he nailed it. I think he killed that job.
And as I said, I think I heard going in, some people had said to me like, "Oh, get ready for it gets a bit weepy at the end. You know, you're going to see a dog die." And I'm a bitch. I cry at movies all the time. I didn't cry at this one. The closest I got to feeling the emotional core of the film was actually John Leguizamo when he sees him when he goes to talk.
So
to
they
him.
have that conversation, and he's sort of saying about how he was loyal to Odysseus, and they it's mega, innit?
Yeah.
The subtext is beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And Odysseus doesn't reveal himself because Agamemnon's told him not to do that. And so I thought that was really good. So John Leguizamo, I mean, all of these actors are like they all killed it for me. I mean, Anne Hathaway, I thought she got the Oscar bait scene, didn't she? Where it's I sat on them teeth over 20 years. I want Odysseus,
which is pretty not.
That's about the only
Greek
feminist part forced in is the adaptation rule. Also,
there was also the Circe part of, look at these men, they're pigs. By the way, when that scene in the Odyssey, when that happens, after she does that, Odysseus like,
but here's the thing, Monty.
Yeah.
That's why this is actually like a right-wing movie, but with left-coded elements is the modern speak. Because that's to make all the dickhead feminists go, oh, yeah, see, men are pigs, aren't they? In a way, because that's, remember at the end, she goes, put back your disguises on. Like, listen, by the way, that doesn't bother me because it's a great horror scene. Honestly. And I know when he's playing to there. I know the crowd he's playing to there, bro. Don't worry about that one.
I mean, put it this way, Samantha Morton is like, if you ever need a psychopathic woman, she's the go-to. I mean, I remember her when she like burst onto the British acting scene where she played a teenager who gets murdered in Cracker. If anyone remembers that TV series with Robbie Coltrane. And like she's just been, I mean, obviously she was in that Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report. Like fucking, she has just been on the top of her game for so long, and it's just great to see again. Circe was like perfect casting, and like she absolutely kills it. And that scene also genuinely horrifying and technically brilliant.
I loved what she did with the pig scene. However, it is super. I didn't appreciate we'll put your disguises back on. I thought it was hokey. And also, like, what's funny is if you know about that scene, literally the real scene is Odysseus comes in and he's like, "Can you turn my men back?" And she's like, "Okay, but I need you to bang me." And he's like, "All right, but no more shenanigans." Fucks her for a year straight.
Yeah.
By the way, there's another thing. People told me also, because it's actually, the critique's the best way to do it, because everyone's going to be tainted by it already, so we have to address these things to get into them, right? People also said in this fucking film, stuff like, when, what was I going up there? Wait a second. And that when... where was I going with this thing here? All right, well, I'll go a different route on it. Like, people said, for example, that like, they took elements and it was all like silly dialogue and jokes. Hey, my dad's come. By the way, that isn't. You don't even notice that in the movie. It's not. They're not all speaking out from California. That's not a thing.
The one time it took me out of it was when Sinon said, "Or just make some stuff up." About the mythologizing Sinon, about Odysseus telling the story of Sinon. That was a little too modern.
I think it would take people more the movie if it's stroke in a stilted way. By the way, there are some amazing Shakespeare movies made in England that I can't watch because they actually just use the fucking lines from Shakespeare, bro. It's impenetrable. You've ruined the movie. You have like fucking god tier actors. Just have them speak in a vaguely plausible modern way, mate. Reinterpret. It's an adaptation. It is not a one-for-one translation of what you're doing. And then similarly, right, people also, they were mad about all those elements, right? I'll tell you the one that I think is the most forced outrage I've ever seen is of the idea that he said, he didn't say this, that's why you had to change it, you fuck, that he said, that's the end of the Bronze Age. Oh, it's just like saying it's the Middle Age. He didn't say that at all. He said in a very poetic way, like, this ends our age of bronze. By the way, the main metal they were using at the time was bronze, which they used to make copper art shit, right? Right. In this scenario, he's not implying he knows there's an Iron Age. He doesn't imply that at all. That's even phrased not to be, that's the end of the Bronze Age. That is literally a commentary which has already been explained about how their current age and their civilization is ending, and they're going to go into a period where they have to go away and it's going to be taken over by a new one. That wasn't even weird to me. That was so forced to me, because like I said, they didn't just quote what it said. They made it sound like he said that's the end of the Bronze Age.
Well, I mean, the worst. To me, the real funny part of the ending is when he says, "Telemachus, you're king now, and I'm leaving. I guess you're going to get killed by the sea people or whatever."
I mean, fucking off.
Him just piecing out at the end is a little absurd.
Yeah, fucking off on a cruise again with his missus is a bit crazy.
When he knows the sea people are coming, and he's like, "Well, Telemachus, you just deal with this problem."
To be fair, though, he's done his time, like 20 years.
Maybe we have a different perspective. Here's the thing. Again, he is representative archetypally of the old king and order, which is now going away. And what must be the people to address the new order and the sea people coming in is the next generation, which he has empowered through a patriarchal lineage. All the things that you all said he'd never do, because that would be incredibly anti-woke. That's actually in fitting with his whole paradigm of the Odyssey, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Like in this particular setting, what do you want him to do at the end? And we'll get ready for the next adventure of Odysseus in Book 3. Shut up. What do you want him to do?
I mean, for
want
me,
him to be king of Ithaca again. That's what I want.
Well, then go read the book. He's in there every time, Monty. Exactly the way you want it. Every fucking time you want it, homie. Then go watch all the. Oh wait, there isn't another great movie about the Odyssey. My bad.
I'll say this. I think the again, to tie it into the conservative with a little c values, I think actually taking out it sort of forgives and glazes over the infidelity with Calypso, which remember that's 7 years he's eating them pills and banging Charlize Theron, right? But also taking the fact that he did have a sex with Circe out and fathered a child with her. I think taking all of that out and actually making it, like you said, this sort of the interesting angle is that Odysseus is denying himself access to the love of his life because as some sort of subconscious penalty for the atrocious crimes he committed in Troy, which remember...
And maybe he's lost himself as well. Maybe he doesn't feel like Odysseus anymore, you know what I mean?
And ultimately, I think the framing of Troy is this pivotal moment in human history where trust will be irreparably broken forever, almost like, the biting of the apple in the Garden of Eden, this moment where humanity is forever changed because we broke the laws of the gods, we broke these societal norms. I think that's a really powerful framing. And I definitely felt what this movie is saying to me and to anyone that's watching it with a clear set of eyes is there are things... there are norms worth preserving and there are things worth embracing, and you should be loyal and faithful to your wife, and you should defend your homeland, and you should, be a good father to your son and be present where possible. And, it's like there was a lot of very traditional values kind of baked into the story.
Here's what's funny. Since we're doing the Chudosphere, do you want to know? I'll claim my own personal victory right now, Richard. You might have seen it, right? When I did my tweet, because I went to see the midnight screening on the day it came out, exactly midnight, saw the movie. Second I came out, I did the tweet, which some people will have seen, where I basically just said, you're all fools. Your Achilles heel is you judged the book by the cover. You had hubris. You thought you knew better than ever. Christopher Nolan, how would you ever doubt him, right? A response to my tweet, the only one I replied to, was by Carlos R. Ocelot. Carlos Rodriguez, the character you all think is like the reincarnation of Franco and is so evil and right-wing and evil. Do you know what's funny? Because he asked me, is it any good? And I told him basically it is and why publicly. He went and saw the movie and he himself did an anti-Chudosphere fucking tweet and basically said he loves it, it's archetypal, it has ideas of masculinity, all the things we've talked about in this episode. A person who, by their logic, they act like he has Andrew Tate, bro. You know what I mean? And he plays this guy.
Come to think of it,
it shows
Duncan,
you how much nuance there is to people, mate.
Think about, right, the allegory of how Odysseus proves who he is by the bowstring, almost like an Arthurian sword, right? That only the true chosen one,
which is also works really well in this film, is dope.
Yeah. And the way that it is shown is essentially not just a test of cunning and problem solving, but also just raw fucking core strength.
Based as fuck.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
He's the Giga Chad.
Odysseus is him. Yeah, even at the end when he's got all arrows and fucking spears in him, and you think you're getting a dying scene, he just says, "I'm not dying here. We're gonna get on a fucking boat in a minute. Let's go. I'm back." It's wild. And
also, there's another thing. How could you hear all these other elements and you just get lost in the weeds and the casting and you're looking at, but the original tech, bro, if that last return scene doesn't work for you, check out of movies. They're not for you. That was so, by the way, there's nothing subversive about that. It hits all the beats you want it to and more. It plays to you, make your heartstrings get tugged. It plays to make you cry. It makes you want to go, fuck yes. It makes you want to see violence and things done to people and people killed in a fucked up way and cowards explode. All this dope shit, by the way, that exactly the same dickhead chud would love if I had said it was a movie from 2004 and it's based and there's a free fucking Monster Energy white drink at the end of it. They'd be loving this shit.
It's why they also reveal themselves to be disingenuous with the whole thing around, Lord of the Rings. They do this thing where there's a meme going around where, the Odyssey is rated above Lord of the Rings Return of the King. It's got 97% critics score on Rotten Tomatoes. So this proves that the game is rigged, and critics are only saying they like the Odyssey. Well, why isn't that true about the movie that's got 95% then, the Return of the King? If the Return of the King is the pro-chud, pro-good movie, why did the critics like that one? So it doesn't even make any logical sense, but the Lord of the Rings adaptation had all of the issues that you would have with adapting the Odyssey for the big screen. We're going to have to take some characters out. We're going to merge some characters. Well, turn in Liv Tyler into some sort of double girl boss, because because they gave two.
By the way, I believe in the first film, one of the best scenes, the one where she rides down the horse. And I don't think she even does that in the book, mate.
No, it's I can't.
That's just like it's like a different elf, does it? I believe.
Yeah, I can't remember which elf it is.
Anyway, it's better though, isn't it? That scene's better in the fucking movie than the book. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Was that
but you're right, because people came in without the same assumption. They don't see it as woke; they just see it as a cool scene.
The culture war back then, like when we're talking early noughties and early 90s, like in fact, do you want to know what? The culture war was simply like, it was fought along the lines of like the traditional and the imperialistic tendencies of like Western power structures versus like libertarian notions of freedom. That was essentially the divide in the culture war there. That ultimately there are people now that would hold opinions that would put them on either side of the culture war paradigm now that would have been on explicitly one side before, because it's like you said, the SJW and the chud are just a mirror image of each other, screaming into each other's faces. They are outraged by things that they don't think confines to their value system. They believe that there's a conspiracy to do these things to essentially erode the power structure and the world they want, right? The SJW thinks it's a racist patriarchy. The chudosphere thinks it's a fucking feminist matriarchy, right? And they cannot understand that essentially there's no need to argue about any of this, because if you just adopt what we had in the 2000s of I'm a libertarian, make whatever the fuck you want and just leave me alone, I will not consume what I don't want to consume, and I will create the art I want to create. Well, unfortunately, it's these dickheads now that wrestled us away from that. We had it. It was perfect. You could use whatever words you want. You could use all the no words. Those no words were becoming, unanchored and untethered from power. Every single day they were being normalized. The spicy F word it wasn't a homophobic slur. We even created a whole branch of the N word with an A at the end, so everybody could say it. And we were all getting along fine. And then this culture war fucking thing just cropped up out of fucking nowhere. And now we're like, this is racist coded. This is feminist coded. We were just on the right path of ignoring all of this silly bullshit about art and words and all. We were going in one direction, and we zigged instead of zagged. And now, unfortunately, we're just arguing over utter nonsense. And I cannot believe for the life of me how anybody could think this is a woke movie, whatever the fuck that means, right?
For instance, as we pointed out, pretty bad woke movie. Here's an idea. Why not just have Penelope kill him at the end? Why not have a thing where she gets all the women together and they do a reversal and she pulls the rug out? But you didn't do any of that shit. You didn't even attempt to do any of that stuff.
But I also, again, we've gone on for too long. We do need to wrap up the show. But I also don't even understand what even is woke anymore? Like, what even is it? Like, put it this way: 10 years ago, when everything was being yassified, I knew what woke meant. Woke obviously meant that you were so progressive to such an insane level that everything you engaged with, you could only engage with it along the levels of it being bad, being racist, being
here's
sexist,
what's funny, I can
being
answer it
homophobic,
to you.
being transphobic.
This is also where right-wing people have made the same mistake in behaviour that they complain about left-wing people. They've purity spiraled. Now, the gag is
Correct,
you can't even be racist. You have to be as racist as me. Otherwise, you're secretly woke. It's like, the guy's racist, bro.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
How can he ever be woke? But so in the same way as like a left-wing person, I won't say who, but it's actually happening in esports. They took a pro player, liked a tweet that was mildly critical of Zelensky, and they now say on Reddit he is blatantly pro-Russia.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
Do you see how one of them is an utter absurd, exaggeration? You've done the same thing with right-wing shit. You're acting like, literally, essentially, unless Odysseus turned to the camera and said, do you see those spicy F words? Get a load of mad dick.
Yeah, exactly.
You're actually woke because you didn't put that. By the way, two more things. One, we didn't discuss Matt Damon. People also told me Matt Damon's shit in this movie. I think Matt Damon killed it. I think it's really good.
Monty?
I think he's fine. My problem with this is that I think he wasn't given a lot to do because, in my opinion, one of the problems with this film is that it flattens Odysseus's character pretty significantly.
I wanted to bring this up. Do you want to know something that's weird, Monty? People say, because of the scene with the Cyclops, he didn't have any of the tricky. He's constantly showing really fast speech, like analytical thinking and doing cool things. He outwits Cersei. He does a bunch of these things. I thought he did a good job with that.
His intelligence is there and his craftiness is there. The thing about Odysseus is that he is the portrayal in the movie, not because of Matt Damon's fault, is that Odysseus is very arrogant. That's not really present. He's also a liar.
I don't know, man. The contempt his men have for him by the fucking end is pretty fucking apparent. Like, it's like,
sure, but I don't
firing
think
the arrow at the Cyclops. What the fuck have you done that for?
Well, I think that it's much more played up in the text.
Sure.
And also, he frequently lies, which also makes him a very unreliable narrator. When he's telling the story to Nausicaa, you don't even know if it's true. Because he is deceptive. He is spiteful, actively spiteful towards the god. Ignoring the Cyclops thing, the whole reason this kicks off is because he doesn't give the right sacrifices when they leave Troy. And then it's exacerbated by the fact that Polyphemus is Poseidon's son and he, is a dick. Well, I mean, justifiably so.
Did you know this? Apparently Poseidon was also the god avatar or whatever the fuck for horses.
Yes, yeah.
I didn't know
horse is one of Poseidon's
That's why
symbols.
Team Liquid is that, because it's horses coming out as the waves,
Yeah. Anyway, yes, yeah. So anyway, and also, as I discussed previously, Odysseus is a horny bastard. He fucks everything.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's also a thing people miss about the antiquity. Remember, back then, you're not like, until death do us part. You married your wife for political reasons so that you could have like a sire children. Well, you're out about, you're fucking everyone. Everyone was back then.
I do think he really, and he was also, seduced via magic by Calypso.
Repeatedly in this movie.
But,
well, not this movie,
but there is a sexual element to Odysseus that's missing here too. So I don't expect them to get the whole
scenes.
Matt Damon sex scenes.
I'm against sex scenes. I think they're just garbage most of the time. No. Unless it's like irreversible or some insane shit.
There isn't. I don't think. So let me put it this way. I don't like Odysseus very much as a character. He's actually one of my least favorite Greek heroes because I do think he's kind of an asshole. My ride or die guy in the Iliad and the Odyssey is actually Diomedes. But Odysseus, he's presented as a cunning general, but there is a lot of the negatives about his character, which make him more human, I think are just left out. So my point is that I liked Matt Damon's performance for what he was given, but I also don't think that this portrayal of Odysseus had a lot of meat on the bone.
I mean, they're not going to make him Littlefinger out of Game of Thrones, are they? By the way, there's actually one other element I want to bring up that I actually think also, in my opinion, it is quite obvious Christopher Nolan, Alan Moore has the same illness. They really love to read science books and science magazines. And when they get a cool idea and they get the concept, they put it into their work. So in the same way as I'm almost certain that he made Interstellar because he read about things like tesseracts and what happens when you go to planets where time dilation happens. I'm almost certain he made Tenet because he was reading about entropy and he was like, wait, how would that work though in like a car chase and a gunfight? So I'll give you the angle. I think actually, this is pure speculation. I actually haven't been able to find anything online. I didn't even search for it. But there is already a famous trend about the Odyssey. Maybe Monty does or doesn't know this, which is there's a very famous book called, let me see, I wrote it down here. It is called The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind by Julian Jaynes. And it's a guy who wrote a book where he speculated that at a certain time, he actually used literally the Iliad and the Odyssey as an example of this. He believes that in ancient times, the human brain literally wasn't connected in the same way. And it was like two hemispheres. And that what people used to perceive the world as is that's why they all worshipped gods, because they thought that when the other side of the brain spoke to them and told them, like, do this, you need to do that. That was the voice of a god doing that. That was sort of like Zeus telling you that. That was whatever, Osiris, that was whoever it would be, was the one informing you. And they actually used the example of the idea that they weren't, as a result, responsible for their decisions and actions. It was like they were being told what to do. And he used the Iliad as the notion that was like the the thing. And that he thinks like part of the brain got connected after that, essentially. And then it's like you didn't hear God anymore. You hear your own thoughts inside your head and you can have the discourse. And so the notion is, I'll read the quote. It says, the Iliad and the Odyssey sit on either side of a threshold. In Julian Jaynes's, the name of that book, they mark the birth of self-awareness itself. In the Iliad, the gods still issue commands and humans obey them like heard voices. By the Odyssey, the gods fall silent and initiative passes to a cunning, already self-conscious man. The gap between the two epics is where introspection is born. Now, if I say all of that, doesn't that seem more plausible? Actually, that fucking Christopher Nolan read that, and that's why he made the movie this way. Because notice, in the movie, that's almost what happens. The fall of Troy is what makes Odysseus have this like self-actualization of like, what have I done? Who the fuck am I? And what is our people anymore? Look, it's a fan theory sort of, but it's a really, really famous fan theory because this guy wrote a legendary book about it. So I know it's a bit of a wacky idea, but I thought I'd just bring it up because I think it actually adds a little bit interesting lens to this movie.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Oh, and one last thing. Here's the one last banger. Here's why I'm certain. It's my conspiracy. Here's why I'm certain Christopher Nolan read it. Because are you ready? Part of the idea of like the brain and all the rest of it. Do you know what the poster of this movie is, Richard? It's Agamemnon with a golden spine going up his brain. Yeah. Now, people always say like things like that, the consciousness go. I think for real, this is like actually in the movie. I think it's not a pure fan theory.
No, I put it this way. Look, Chris, you have to understand, Christopher Nolan is such a brilliant technical director, which, again, it blows my mind that there's people in comments saying he's made objectively bad films. Like, I watch a lot of objectively bad movies, right? Like, I've even made you watch some of them, right? So I know what a bad film looks like, and Christopher Nolan hasn't made one. But I do imagine that, like, part of the joy of the filmmaking for Christopher Nolan is probably to challenge himself on some other level, because when it comes to pointing the camera and saying go, you know, and get, like, he's got that down. I mean, like, all of his movies look so fucking good and are so technically shot. Yeah, why wouldn't you try and make something that like challenges your own self, you know?
Don't you get the sense with all these movies, he's really going for really ambitious ideas? Like Oppenheimer, he doesn't just show a guy with a bot, he shows everything about Tenet, he's doing time backwards. Dunkirk, it's not just a war movie, is it? Every time it feels like he's trying to make a movie no one else could make.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, as we talked about in the Tenet episode, I think, unfortunately, that one, you know, his reach exceeded his grasp, even though it was better than I remembered.
That's next episode,
also fitting because that was the quote in the Prestige, the one that he nailed, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it funny that the Christopher Nolan arc is also out of time? The time,
it is funny. You guys are going to see us, you know, all the way through the fifth play talking about following, where we're like, I don't know if the Odyssey is going to be good or not, because this is the last one we're actually recording.
But anyway, I mean, look, I think Christopher Nolan is trying to make movies that ultimately will always hold up to rewatches and that you can apply interesting theories to. I don't think Christopher Nolan just wants to tell you a simple story, like because ultimately telling simple stories is pretty straightforward. You know, one of the reasons.
Why another critique people have is they go, he's no Kubrick. I always say, even though it's cliched, he's the only heir to Kubrick. Like, what's mad is he even has the same thing. As you're saying, you come back with theories on the rewatch, you see something different with it. And by the way, I don't do the thing where you call everyone a genius and call, but I hate that. Like, you'll know in Counter-Strike, I don't let anyone be the next Simple until Odyssey, because he is the next Simple. You know what I mean? Again, when someone just nails it, you're going to hail to the king. So I think that I'm with you. The idea that like he's just some hacks fucking mental in it.
And I agree as well as the inherent narrative what Kubrick was doing with cinema, because Kubrick every time he made a movie, Kubrick tried to tell you a story in a different way, and Kubrick jumped around genre. He wasn't afraid. If he had a vision for the movie, he would take it on, and that's why he's done everything from period pieces and to comedies to horror. And Christopher Nolan's that guy too. Christopher Nolan is not making one type of film. You know, this is his spin on a classic epic movie. Now, some people have decided we're going to make it a culture war moment. Thankfully, that'll all be gone in 2-3 years by the time Nolan's in pre-production for his next movie, and people will be able to look at this with a sober vision. And the sober vision is this. Remember when we had that spate of epics that we covered, like the Troys and the Gladiators? Well, none of them looked like this. None of them were as technically accomplished as this. A lot of them were held up by performance or brought low by performance, you know, like Orlando Bloom or whatever it might be. You know, the reality is this is the best epic movie that's been made in a long, long time. Does it immediately go into the pantheon of the classics? I think on a technical level it has to. I think it's the best technical epic shot since Ben-Hur. That's what I put on the fucking poster, right? So, but Christopher Nolan's also made one of the most realistic war films. We all talk about Saving Private Ryan, but in Dunkirk, you're on the beach. You're really fucking there, and he's done that, and he's made you feel that way. Interstellar does insane things with, theoretical
Space-time.
physics. Yeah, theoretical physics and space-time brought to life in a tangible way.
Inception with dreams,
narrative.
obviously.
Yeah, Inception projects dream logic into a heist movie. Like, fuck me. Like, what more do you want this guy to do? And the reason why it's so pathetic to now go back and retcon that Christopher Nolan is some sort of hack director who only does one thing. If anything, the critique is he does too much.
Yes.
He doesn't
If
have
anything,
one lane.
Tenet was overly ambitious.
Yeah, exactly. So I just don't see what everyone is now. I mean, again, it's none of it's real. It's clearly a retconned hipster opinion. You can say Interstellar has some cringe dialogue and Anne Hathaway's character is bad in it, or Matt Damon is annoying, or whatever. You can say all of that stuff. That's valid critique. You can't call it a bad movie.
Notice also that works way better. I make this point all the time, but people don't get it. I always say this, right? All of us are idiots when we talk shit on pro players in sports or esports when they make a split-second bad decision. Because what we're all acting like is they're sat observing from a distance with no feeling of what's going on in emotion and we're all just calmly going, I would probably have done... Shut the fuck up. You wouldn't have done any of that if you were in that moment. So similarly, when I listen to all the critique, Richard, like you're saying about it, it's all true. I think there's some hokey parts. I tell you what, though, when you watch the movie, you don't get that because you're feeling it. You're immersed. There's another thing. How is he cold and calculated and distant? He has some of the most immersive films I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He makes me forget that I don't like that actor. Makes me forget that's a bad line. I'm on to the next, you know.
Yeah, I think that is the word. I think, like, ultimately it is, like, for Christopher Nolan, it's immersion. That's what he wants
Notice
to
how
do.
when you asked me in our little group chat, when I'd seen it, you said, is it good? I didn't say if it was good. I just said it feels really big. It's engaging and it has a really unique twist. I think that sold it. It's a pretty good angle. I left it to you whether you enjoyed it or not. I tried not to spoil it. I think that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, and like I say, it's not a top 3 Nolan movie for me. I mean, I'm probably not going to rewatch this as much as I'll rewatch
By the way, despite the fact
Inception.
I've talked up a lot of it, it's not for me. It's in like the bottom half of his oeuvre. It's but again, I'm with you. The worst movie he's ever made is a 7 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. He's never fell below 7, and it's crazy that people are trying to make the argument otherwise. So yeah,
and the crowd that really does he's a stupid person's idea. By the way, people who say that framing are literally stupid people's idea of intelligent critiques. Like that framing almost never works with anything. Joe Rogan says it's a dumb person's idea of smart. Actually, it's the other way around. He's a self-admitted, not very intelligent person who's very open and has actually what you call neophilia. He's open to new ideas, and he tries really hard to understand concepts that are quite hard to understand through conversation, where he tries to bring people to his level. I think that's really cool, actually. You don't need to have any other element, you know.
How anybody couldn't think Christopher Nolan is intelligent. I mean, again,
seems really he seems overly cerebral, if anything, right?
Yeah. I mean, like
that's my issue with him.
what are we doing? So I mean, for me, it's kind of just really an interesting race now, because I mean, the other big visionary tent director is Denis Villeneuve.
Yep,
we've already covered. And I'm just kind of I'm looking to see which one.
Oh, by the way, do you want a punchline? By the way, I'm going to stack them all together, Richard.
Yeah, go on.
All the right-wing people love the Dune movies because it features the fucking Sardaukar and the Harkonnens and their world. Do you know what? That movie takes way more liberties, fucks up the essence of things. And again, we critique that already. You guys are idiots. You're not consistent. The joke, like I said, is you're going to say, I can't watch this, it's woke. And then watch fucking Better Call Saul. Shut up, dickhead. Jog on. Jog on, mate. You aren't reading the Odyssey. Fuck out.
My problems with this interpretation of the Odyssey aside, I think this is a more interesting take on a book than Dune by Villeneuve. I think it has more. I think it's more unique. I think it's more intellectual.
I have had zero desire to go back and rewatch Dune and Dune 2, and I'm not particularly
What I even do, Richard,
Dune
is
3.
I just look up the scenes that were cool on YouTube, and I watch the Harkonnen world, and I watch the opening scene where they float up into I don't watch the movie again.
Here's what's mad as well. Like, doesn't Dune have all of the problems that Judas-Fear were complaining about?
Yeah, exactly.
You've got your woke casting, you've got your Zendaya.
Zendaya's right in front and center, completely
they
subverting
turned Chani into a girl boss. I mean, I just don't feel it like generated any of the same cultural outrage, and yet here we are. We've arrived at this, like I think, pretty conservative interpretation of the Odyssey, and this is the movie you think is woke trash, mental. It's just mental. I don't know, boys. All right, but anyway, just wrap it up, Monty. I'll let you do a little outro, but I enjoyed this. I'm in the middle of you. I don't adore Christopher Nolan to the same degree Thorin does, but in Christopher Nolan's case, clearly Thorin sees him as a self-insert. That's fine. There it is, right?
I don't need to make movies now. He's doing it already for me.
Yeah, exactly. And you're a classicist, so I knew you would obviously have some problems with this, and you were coming a little bit negatively. Me, a humble, borderline chud-brained guy myself, just wanted a big popcorn movie.
Also, you know what?
Served me immensely.
In this one moment, actually, I also do fuck with people who are true iconoclasts, because you know what? All the dickheads would have thought, oh, you're going to be right there. They should think, nah, in this case, mate, I was never on your side. Fuck off too. You can jog on as well, mate. Just because we had a few philosophical ideas, I have to go and watch movies based on whether you like them, you twat. No, I watch the movies I care about, mate.
Also, unfortunately, the role fell to me to nitpick some parts of this film, but I still think my ultimate opinion is that it is probably, a 7 to 8 out of 10, and it is visually spectacular, and I enjoyed watching it. You know what I mean? I just think, there are certain things as a lover of the source material that I do have problems with, but it doesn't ruin my enjoyment of the movie. And like I said, I also respect people's ability and celebrate it when they try and take unique interpretations on the
other
material.
Thing we
That's
did
fine.
say, this was one of your critiques, Richard, was he's going for 3-hour epics of fucking thing. I'll tell you what, I'll say the line again, Bart. This didn't feel long in a bad way. It felt long in a way. It felt like I went on an Odyssey. I went on a journey. By the time I've seen things replayed as though, which I think was good for effect. At the end, that's why it was so. I thought it was fucking epic.
The thing I'll think about for a long time is, I don't really go to the cinema anymore. I think the cinema is a negative experience by and large. Young people on their phone, not paying attention to the movie. It's like it's somewhere to go and hang out now. And movie theaters weren't that, right? But one of the things I'll think about for a long, long time when I'm assessing this movie and ultimately what it achieved is that full screening of an unbelievably diverse mix of people that would never have engaged with classical text in any way, shape, or form for the rest of their lives. Young guys that are thinking about how to get fucking laid or, go and have a party, sitting down there to watch a 3-hour-long interpretation of the Odyssey is mind-blowing. And there's only one movie magician that can make that happen, and it's Christopher Nolan. So, I think we'll look back at this period as actually a net good for people having an appreciation for antiquity. I'd be very interested actually to see, because in September we're going to get students in Britain going through clearing so they can get to university. I wonder how many are going to change course, or how many are going to go and study classics or archaeology or whatever now, because you'd be amazed how things like this do create trends. Like, for example, I was watching a documentary about the history of Doctor Who the other day, right? Another thing that I like. And Matt Smith famously was the doctor who wore the bow tie. Sales of bow ties.
The guy who's in House of the Dragon as David Targaryen, if people know.
Sales of bow ties in Britain went up 94% on the basis of that.
Okay.
And so I think what Nolan's done here, probably like a lot of people wanted to go work for NASA on a space program after Interstellar.
Yeah, for sure.
He's created something truly aspirational and interesting. And I think when it comes to classics, that's a truly great thing. These are all foundational stories that essentially create, this is like essentially the birth of the flashback, the Odyssey, right?
Yes.
So all of the things that you love narratively all start here, when we start writing shit down for each other to read and remember for a long period of time. And to all the people saying Christopher Nolan doesn't know better than Homer, he never claimed to.
No.
Right. And what he's done is he's tried to preserve something that, has stood the test of time, just in a different format. What isn't it I love about that? So I honestly, the whole culture war stuff was so surprising to me. And I think it's a complete inversion of the reality.
And when people did that thing of like, the actress hasn't even read the book, she's not doing the book, she's doing Christopher Nolan's script of the Odyssey. By the way, the idea you haven't read the book's mental. I'll tell you right now, one of my all-time favorite, Marlon Brando, didn't even read the scripts, bro. He was
I know.
Yeah. What do you want? Like, that's mean shit to me. What's the performance like? That's what I want to know. Yeah.
Correct.
All right, guys. Well, we'll be back next week with Tenet, another very controversial Nolan movie, as the next part of our
arc. And then the arc starts running backwards, and you want me to do all these episodes.
That's right. And then the arc starts running backwards, and you'll hear us talk about our trepidations about the Odyssey. So it is very Nolan-esque in the way that we filmed this. So we'll see you guys then.